All right, well, good evening, everybody. It's good to see you all. Welcome to the Parks and Community Services Commission meeting of May 11th, 2023. We're going to call the meeting to order at 6 o'clock p.m. Commissioner Brown will be joining us midstream tonight. I know there's a back to school night tonight as well. So we will definitely look forward to accommodating her later. But with that, we'll turn it over to you, Ms. Fatua and Ms. Vitari, to call the order. Or roll call, excuse me.
Pledge of Allegiance comes first. Yep. Sorry, Chair.
Christian, would you be so kind to lead us in the pledge? Thank you, Commissioner Garcia Arcos. And now the roll call, Ms. Fatua. Thank you.
All right. Commissioner Glab? Absent. Commissioner Brown? Absent. Commissioner Garcia Arcos?
Here.
Commissioner Wall?
Present.
Commissioner Wright?
Here.
Vice Chair Dorn Parker?
Here.
Chair Rutherford?
Present.
We have quorum.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ms. Fatua.
Sir, if I could just, Commissioner Glab had knee surgery yesterday, so arthroscopic knee surgery. I asked him to give us an update if he could, but it was yesterday and I had not heard from him in time for the meeting. So we will send our wishes from the commission, if you're okay with that, on a speedy recovery for his knee surgery. And then I believe it was mentioned Commissioner Brown will try to be here at some point during the meeting, coming for another event.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Director Minter. And we do have the first item on the agenda before public comments is a staff presentation on part-time recruitment. So an exciting update. So we'll turn it over back to you guys.
So while we're getting set up, Recreation Manager Monique Villasenor, we were trying to get our Senior Recreation Supervisor Ashley to do it, but she had a mentoring commitment. So Monique's going to be our stand-in to tell you the latest and greatest on our recruitment strategy.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. So we are getting ready to launch a mass marketing campaign with our new pay rates for our part-time positions. So I'm just going to walk you through our splash page, which is not live yet. It's still a work in progress, but just the example of how we are going to be promoting and marketing our positions. So with that, I will go ahead and click on the link just to show you the splash page.
So if you want, that QR code should be working. So if you want to try it, for those of you QR aficionados, give it a try. But
yes. So the QR code you'll be able to scan anytime, and it takes you here. So this is, like I said, still a work in progress, but we are having this one centralized location with all of the information about applying for our part-time jobs, what kind of benefits you get, the pay rates, what kind of programs you could potentially be working with. So like I said, I just want to keep reiterating, this is still a work in progress. We hope to launch by next week. So I'll just walk through a couple of the links that we have. We do emphasize right off the bat that our starting pay is $20 an hour, so that really gets people intrigued right off the bat. And then coming from, I don't know if you've ever seen our city website, sometimes navigating where to apply and how to apply is a little bit difficult. So with this one page, you'll be able to access all that from one area. So when you click here, job opportunities, it takes you right to our centralized location of our part-time positions. These classifications are updated for the most part. Like I said, we're still working on them. Going back to our splash page, you click on part-time salary and benefits. Here it tells you right off the bat what our pay ranges are. You can see the employee and city contract association contracts and the benefits, so that way anybody knows that they're applying, that there are some benefits to applying with the city and even working part-time. Back. How to apply, I think, is one of the most important aspects, especially for the part-timer. Applying for government jobs is not always the easiest thing to navigate. You know, at other part-time positions, whether that's retail or fast food, you go in and you fill out an application, and right from there, you know the process. Here, you have to go on and create a link, so we made it a little bit more easier to understand. You visit the government jobs website, you'll go on and create an account. So before, that wasn't always explained in detail, so at least here we can let our future part-timers know how to do that. Programs and job positions. This goes a little bit more in depth into what's expected of a leader, a senior community services leader, and the lifeguard series. We're still working on the essential job duties, and then also you can click on the program part. So when you apply for one of the positions, we do have a questionnaire part of the application that says, what programs are you interested in? And from there, you can go ahead, from this webpage, you can say, hey, I've already read about some of these programs because it was on the website. Click on it, read all about it. So yes, I am interested in that. And so they're able to mark more than one, but at least we know, what supervisor should be hiring for what center. Really try to make it as detailed oriented as possible so they know what they're applying for. And then just the last part is to connect with us. Just to reiterate, here's all the ways that we are available to speak, whether that's social media, emailing, phone calls, whatever they need, they can contact us about questions about any of it. So, so that's our web page. And then we are also going to be promoting soon one big hiring event. So we will have a job fair. First of its kind. I think we talked a little bit about it before, but we want to make it a very easy and smooth process. There's quite the logistical pre-employment process before you get hired. So this job event will make that even smoother. Sometimes there will be positions that you apply for that have taken 4 to 6 weeks to go through the whole process, get on board, but we're trying to eliminate that. We're working with our human resources department to create this event so that way they can go through their live scan, their whatever else they would need, TB testing, all that kind of stuff that we require of part-timers. They can get appointments or get some of that paperwork done all in one day. So if we have a hiring event, we're able to offer a job to that applicant that same day. So we're working on the details and the process of this event, but this is the intention for us to, in one bulk, get the most bang for our buck, I guess you would say, and get a lot of part-timers on board this day. But with that, that's a kind of a general update on our hiring and our recruiting.
So if you want to put the page back up with the QR code, just so they can see it, if you want to take a screenshot or if you want to try the QR code or whatever, this is something we do want or encourage you to share with, friends and family and loved ones and anyone that you think is going to be a good employee to help, carry out our mission as a department. So I think if there are any questions, please let us know.
Awesome. Yeah, if there's any commissioner questions, now's the time. All right, seeing none. Well, thank you, Monique. That was a great presentation, and we're excited to help get out the word to the members of the public joining us tonight. These are excellent positions, and I'm sure Jason and Monique are very proud of the fact that we're the highest paid Parks Department in Orange County for part-time employees. So we just want to keep getting the word out that it's a great opportunity for our youth if people need a part-time job this summer. So thank you again. That brings us to public comments for matters that are not listed on the agenda. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per speaker. So if there's any public comments for items that are not on the agenda, we'd love to hear from you. And now's the time. You could line up at either podium. All right, seeing none. Is there anybody on Zoom that would like to comment?
Yes, I have Matt Garcia. Matt Garcia, you may now speak.
Hi, good evening, commissioners, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. The presentation on the part-time opportunities is particularly relevant. I'm over here at Save Our Youth right now, and I will share the opportunities with the students here tonight. Additionally, I wanted to mention last Tuesday at the May 2nd City Council meeting, the flying field at Fairview Park came up, and I know at the prior PAX meeting, some of the commissioners had expressed an interest to learn more about the topic. So I just wanted to, as the HSS president, invite any of the commissioners to walk the park with myself and learn about the issue or the flying field and the relevant issues there and how we plan to address them or how we would support addressing them. So please don't hesitate to contact me. I'll send a separate email to the commissioners, but you can find our contact information at our website, www.onehss.org. Thank you very much. That's it.
Chair, there are no other hands raised.
Awesome. Thank you, Ms. Fatua. Thank you, Mr. Garcia. We will close public comments at this point, and bring it back for commissioner comments. So we'll just go in order, no particular order. Commissioner Wright, would you like to start us off tonight?
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Good to see you all. This month went by fast, I feel. I feel like we were just here. It has also been a full month. I enjoyed the Earth Day event, and I was really happy to see that we kicked off the community input meetings for Ketchum and Shalimar. I think the only thing I'd like to highlight is we have Love Costa Mesa Day coming up this month. I am on the planning commission or committee for Love Costa Mesa Day. One of my friends from college, she works for Trellis full-time, and she just shared how Costa Mesa is now becoming the blueprint for this style of collaboration that they have built here between government, our local businesses, and churches. And now they are going and sharing this framework with all these other cities in Orange County. And I just feel really grateful to be a part of it on the government and the business side. And I think it shows how we are trailblazing, whether it's in part-time wages for our department or in collaboration in serving the city. So yes, Love Costa Mesa Day is on May 20th. I know that there's a lot of exciting park projects or cleanup initiatives that are happening on that day. And I also know that there will be a lot of fun rallies in the morning and for lunch. So hope to see you all there and looking forward to our meeting today. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Commissioner Wright. And next down the line from District 3, Commissioner Wall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and excuse me, good evening, everybody. Just a couple of comments. As the relative newbie around here, I'm still working to get my arms around all the moving parts that are represented by Parks and Community Services, but I'm getting there, and that's a good thing. It feels really good. And one of the things that I want to do is give props to the entire team, because I'm sure it's a huge one. When you look at the masthead of Costa Mesa, the spotlight, you see a lot of names on that magazine, and you can tell that all of the different services represented in the city are very well represented by the people that are putting that magazine, the catalog, together. And for people that have never seen it before, you'd have no idea that there's so much going on in the city, and there's so many activities that people can access of all ages, and I think that's just an incredible thing. And so I just wanted to give a shout out for all of that incredible work. The other one is a shout out to the Public Works team, specifically Rob. There was a situation involving a tree that was draped over one of the streets in the city, so much so that it was actually covering or almost covering a car. I saw the picture of it. And what's striking about it is they were reacting in literally one day to take that tree out. So to the extent that we've had some conversations before about dealing with parkway trees, it's good and reassuring to know that in a dire situation like that, we respond quickly, and that tree was gone. So thanks for that. Lastly, I attended the 2 outreaches this past weekend at Ketchum-Liebolt and at Shalimar. A lot of input from the community. In fact, when I walked up to the Ketchum-Liebolt event, Councilman, I'm trying to remember which one it was he was getting an earful. It was Councilmember Gameros. And there was a gentleman there that was giving him quite the earful of his concerns. And it was good to see. I mean, you want the community to be engaged, and this gentleman really was. And so as we moved on to Shalimar, people were equally engaged. And I noticed that there were a couple of us there, and we had a chance to walk the park and get some good input from a couple of the young guys there. They really had a good grasp on what would be helpful for the community. So I just thought that really was a good kickoff, and I look forward to the other outreaches that are coming in the future. And that's it. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, Commissioner Wall. Commissioner Garcia Arcos.
I just want to start off by thanking everybody for being here. There's an event that happened on April 30th of last month, and it was really successful. I really appreciated how the city came through next to the crossing, the church, nonprofits, and the community members coming together to, have a good time and at the same time collaborate and just forget about all the problems that we have. So that was a beautiful day. The people that organized it were Juana Trejo and Sergio Telles. They managed to put all this together, so a special shout out to them. I also wanted to mention I had the opportunity to walk with Tony Megana and Ashley Thomas, and we walked both of the community gardens, and they're really, really beautiful. There is some work to be done, but they inherited, so there's always something to be done, right? We just have to make sure we budget right. But there was a concern that I saw on Hamilton and Harbor. There's these overgrown shrubs that are attracting a lot of rats. They're attracting a lot of homeless, which I call travelers. There's a lot of stuff in there that are pretty dangerous. And so there's an idea that will be brought forward in the next month of how we can change that and how we can collaborate with the city to see if maybe we can get some donations from nonprofits that have already reached out to me to see how they can help. So that's something that they're really aware of, and they want to make sure they kind of relieve the financial burden from that aspect. There's also like Cheyenne mentioned, May 20th is going to be a special day. We, with the help of Rob and the city arborist Jim Ortiz, we got a donation of 16 trees. We're going to be planting 13 trees along Shalimar just for that day. We're going to have 6 raised beds for Shalimar Think Together and different resident there. And what we're trying to teach the residents are to take ownership of these trees, because we can plant as many trees as we want, but who's going to take ownership and who's going to care for them if we don't water them, if we don't structurally prune them, then we're just going to have hazardous trees in the future. So there is some back and forth conversations that we've had of bringing in a young tree company to manage that. Right now we do have one, but they're only managing 2 days a week, which is not enough. So we have to find a budget for that. That's what I feel. I've talked to a lot of experts, one of which is Professor Rick Harlow from OCC. He's a board certified master arborist, and also other certified arborists, and they've gave me feedback, and they think that's really something that along the health of these trees in the long run, it's going to save us that much more. You know, because we're structurally pruning these young trees with hand pruners versus bringing in boom trucks and taking on like 20-foot limbs. I mean, it just makes sense to start now for, you know, the future. So that being said, I just wanted to thank everybody else for, you know, contributing, and hopefully you guys can come out on Shalimar for May 20th. We're gonna have more than just those two things going on, so really exciting. Thank you.
And Vice Chair, do you want to round us out?
Before you, yeah. It's actually pretty short. So I too did a garden tour with Monique, Ashley, and Tony joined us. I'm very familiar with the Del Mar. It actually started out as county property, so we talked about the difference in the sort of the culture and the items planted and how they've developed. And then also went over to Hamilton, and I have to say I'm so impressed with the gardeners, the staff, and the collaborative community. And also, I'm very impressed with the whole staff of trying to figure out, we have large waiting lists, and we also have some gardeners that, you know, maybe no longer can care for the entire bed. So there's a lot of discussion and working with the current gardeners and the ones who are on the wait list, and to talk about raised beds and elevated, because we also, and so I want to let everybody know I was very impressed. I was impressed with the gardening, and then it was interesting to walk around if you haven't done it, because you can see the different gardeners' styles and their philosophies, and it's something that I would hope we can expand on, as we have parts of the city that are very high density, so they don't have a lot of green space. But I think if we offer more options, so that the ones that I loved is what Ashley and Monique said, some are beginners and they're a little afraid to take on a 13 by 14. Is it 12 by 13 or 13 by 14? For 13 by 15 plot. So that's pretty very courageous as a beginner. So I really appreciate how this is now on everybody's plate, and this will be great. And also looking at these infill gardening experiences, and I love that Shalimar maybe can be part of that, because that is a very high density part of our city. The other one is tomorrow, that I will be taking a tour with Andy Campbell around Fairview Park, just to kind of get an idea. I've visited 2 years ago when I first came on with the Soaring Society and with our staff, and just to get an idea of kind of their plans and ideas now that we'll go through the CIP. But it's a very exciting time for everybody, and with these generous grants that we're having. And I'm looking forward to, I actually will be in town. I'll be around for We Love Costa Mesa. So thank you. And thank you, Commissioner Wright, for your leadership on that.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Vice Chair. Thank you, commissioners. It's a blessing to serve with this group of people and with this incredible department. So I do want to reiterate my gratitude for all the work that's being done. It has been a busy past month. There's been so much. To cap it off last weekend with the community meetings, I also had the opportunity to attend the community meeting at Shalimar Park. And it was wonderful to see the amount of youth that came out to give input at that meeting. That's probably one of my favorite events that I've attended so far this year for the city. I'm just talking with young people in the community about their experience at the park, growing up at the park, and improvements they can see. So I'm excited to see Raja and Rob and Mr. Yang, what your department can do with that park. And I know we'll have future input opportunities, so I encourage the public to share your input with us for Shalimar Park and Ketchum-Leibold, as the design for those is underway right now. I also appreciate Christian from District 4 bringing forward those ideas for the community gardens. I think that's, I really appreciate your leadership in that regard, going out, meeting with that after we heard the item last month. So again, thank you for stepping up in that regard. We have a really exciting meeting tonight with a lot of big, heavy things to talk about. So I'm going to shut up and save my comments for the CIP agenda item, which I'm excited to discuss with all of you tonight and hear your feedback. So let's move it on to approve the minutes from our last meeting. And there's a motion by Commissioner Dorn Parker, and I'll second the motion.
Chair, do you mind placing a second on your dais?
Oh, sorry, I don't see an option to
It looked
place
like
a
it
second.
disappeared. It looked like right when it came up, it disappeared. I don't know if the motion maker can try again.
to redo it, so I'm going to redo the
Yeah.
motion. Make motion. Second.
Awesome.
We're good. All right, you guys may start your vote on the dais. Motion carries 5-0 to approve the minutes.
Awesome, thank you. So that brings us to new business, and that's the proposed capital improvement program, CIP budget for fiscal year 2023 to 2024, and the 5-year CIP budget as well. So we'll turn it over to you, Director Setharaman. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Chair Rutherford, and thank you, Commissioners, for having us here. I'll be assisted in this presentation by our parks, our maintenance superintendent, Rob Ryan, Fairview Park Administrator, Kelly Dalton. And for any questions down the road, we have Director Minter and also our City Engineer Yang in the audience, and they'll help on answering any questions. With that, thank you for the staff and the community for attending this meeting. This is to talk about the capital improvement program part of the budget for 23-24, and we are focused on the parks projects. So the CIP budget, that's capital improvement program budget, is financed from many funding sources, and these can include federal, state, and county funds, and also grant funds too. Now, some funds have restrictions, which means they can be used only for specific purposes. And also projects have a lot of reporting requirements and records retention too. All these projects, CIP projects, involve multiple levels of government, multiple levels of oversight and coordination with different agencies, requires approval and are subject to audits. We coordinate extensively with all departments, including our city attorney's office, finance, and if there is any granting agency, we work with them too. For CIP projects, we have a threshold of $30,000. So projects below $30,000, for example, you see some of the painting in restrooms of parks, they're combined in a separate lot called building maintenance projects. So we take care of in that particular line item. CIP, by definition, it's a multi-year program. Projects take multiple years to get accomplished. They involve, first is identify the project, then we go through a design, community outreach phase. Then once the design is done, then we go through the bidding process and then select a consultant and then go to the construction. That's why projects typically, unless it's a very small project, they take more than a year to get through. Our CIP programs, they encompass both the current year, we have many ongoing projects, as well as projects that are proposed in the next fiscal year. And the city staff, we are dedicated to produce high quality projects, and we have won numerous awards. And most recently, on May 4th, we were awarded the best roadway project for Randolph Avenue improvements. With that, I'll get into the 23-24 capital improvement program. So as a background, the overall, there is a CAN ordinance, which is the Capital Asset Needs Ordinance that the City Council adopted, which says 5% of our general fund revenues should be allocated for capital programs, and we do meet that goal. You see that it's not, even though it works out to be $9 million, a portion of that is going towards the bond payment for the Lions Park projects. So that's why it's in the $6.4 million range. For the CIP, the general fund portion of the budget. Now, how we identify the projects. These are identified based on City Council priorities. We go through a goal setting process every year, and they identify what goals they have, what they want to accomplish, and these are reflected in our CIP. We receive feedback from the commissions and committees and community over the years, so we take that into account in developing the capital improvement program. Then we have requests from the departments. Again, this is mainly sometimes on facilities. For example, fire department might need improvements to their fire station, police department might ask for things. So we have the departmental requests, and parks will come up with their list of projects too. So we have that. And then we also look at our own evaluation. So we conduct our own evaluation of all the amenities in parks and facilities and determine what's needed. So that's the infrastructure and facility needs assessment that we do. So in this CIP, it's quite different from others in that we have a lot of grants for especially park projects. About 50% of the CIP is grants and majority for parks. We have $14.4 million as listed here, $10 million through Senator Min, $1.2 million through Assemblywoman Cardi Petrie Norris, and $3.2 million through Supervisor Foley. Now here, this exhibit shows all the different funding sources and the total amount of the projects for the next fiscal year is $31.1 million. And as you can see, the last line in this, before total, that's the grant funds, is $15 million. This shows the same this shows the breakdown in different programs. As you can see, parks account for almost $15.3 million of the CIP. So again, 18 park projects are included in the CIP with a $15.3 million amount. And then $14.4 million is the grants. So if you can see, it's this year we are $12.7 million more than the previous fiscal year for parks projects. So this exhibit is in your report. This shows our one-year CIP, and you can see all the parks projects listed from numbers 12 through 29, which total $15.3 million. So with that, we'll go through some of these projects. So one thing that we are doing in this fiscal year, which we haven't done prior, is we are breaking this down into high priority phase 1 projects and phase 2. It's just because of the sheer number of grant projects, and these grant projects have a deadline. They require us to implement them in the next 2 to 3 years time frame. So we don't have much time to get through these projects. So we want to make sure that we focus our attention and resources on the grant projects. And also there are some, you see this MOE, it's called maintenance of effort. So when we get grants from agencies like our gas tax through the state or the Measure M grant through the county, they want to make sure that we are not using the grant program in lieu of using city funds, which we have used in the past. So they require us to do a minimum maintenance of effort. That's what it is. They don't want us to supplant, or they don't want us to take the grant fund and use the city funds for something else. They want to make sure that we use city funds for what we have been doing. The grant funds should be in addition to what we're already doing. But they require us to maintain that minimum requirement, and we need to make sure that we meet every year. Otherwise, we don't qualify to receive those funds. So that's also is a high priority for us. So as I mentioned, we secured $14.4 million in grant funds for various park improvements. We came to the City Council and Parks and Community Services Commission to provide recommendations on the projects for those $14.4 million at your meetings in March and April. And just again reiterating that grants projects have high priority for implementation. With that, these are some of the specific projects that we talked about before, but we'll mention again. So using funding provided by Supervisor Foley, it's $1.2 million is the grant amount. It's going to go towards the construction of a cafe at Lions Park. This is going to be right adjacent to the 1 acre open space between the library and the Norma Herzog Community Center. And this will provide outdoor dining, and it'll complement the event plan and the campus. And it is to revitalize the area and improve service to the residents and the visitors to this campus. The next exciting project is the expansion of skate park. We have $2 million in grant funds, and that's the estimated cost for the project. We have some initial thoughts on this, and there was some schematics, but it hasn't gone through any community outreach. So we'll be doing extensive outreach on this one to get more ideas and get this design going quickly. And this is to provide a dedicated area for young beginning skaters and to provide new elements. And again, as I mentioned, we'll be developing the design in collaboration with the local community. And this is going to be the expansion of the existing park within that area. Ketchum-Leibold, this is a grant that we have through Assemblywoman Cardi Petrie Norris. We have $1.2 million actually in grant through Assemblywoman, but we have $300,000 in park grants that we have received earlier. So we have a total of $1.5 million for this project. And as many of you mentioned, we did have community meeting on this one last weekend. So we're excited to kick this off, and we'll have a conceptual renderings coming soon, so we can have more engagement on this before we get into the final design of the project. Again, the scope of the project is to expand the park by incorporating the parkway, adding more play elements. Again, there'll be multiple outreach opportunities on this one. With that, we're coming now to Senator Min's project, and we have our Fairview Park Administrator, Kelly Dalton, to talk about Fairview Park.
Good evening, Chair and Commission. Happy to share the projects about Fairview Park. We have $4.5 million that we received from Senator Min this year. We're very fortunate to be moving forward on these projects. The three projects that were approved for funding were the West Bluff stabilization and restoration. As part of that, we'll be primarily focusing on the safety, stabilizing the westerly slope, and then implementing some coastal sage scrub and coastal bluff scrub habitat restoration. The second project is the Mesa restoration. We'll be removing deposited debris that was dumped in approximately the 1990s, installing a protective cap for the cultural resources on the site, and then moving forward with grassland and coastal sage scrub restoration as well. As part of that project, we're also going to be communicating extensively with the tribes, because that overlaps with some of the protected cultural resources on the site. And the last project is the wetlands improvements, addressing some of the water stagnation, water quality, and water supply issues that have plagued this site for a few years. So excited to move forward with those three projects totaling $4.5 million.
So just want to, Chair Rutherford and Commissioners, the amounts that you see from this point onwards, the $4.5 million, and whatever you see down for the next 3 or 4 projects, this is what we proposed and at the previous meeting to you and to the City Council, and this is kind of where we ended up with on those projects. So it doesn't mean it's exactly going to be 4.5. If you recommend any changes, we'll take that input and present to City Council for their consideration. With that, we'll have our maintenance superintendent, manager, Rob Ryan, talk about the next project.
Thank you, Director Sitharaman. Next project is, again, $1 million in funding from Senator Dave Min for Shalimar Park. Obviously, this is going to be really heavily community engagement We're looking to add more play elements, potentially increase the park space by possibly going into the street and just expanding the area. But we're really coming into this with kind of a blank slate and engaging the community to see what their desires are, what their needs are. We did have a community outreach meeting last week, has been mentioned. I have another opportunity coming up with Love Costa Mesa Day with all the projects that are centered in that area. There'll be another opportunity for community engagement at that point next Saturday on the 20th. Next up is LED lighting upgrades at Jack Hammett Sports Complex, the Tewinkle Athletic Complex, the Costa Mesa Tennis Center, and Costa Mesa Park. These were LED improvements that'll enhance the lighting there and also be save money and energy. These were looked at as sustainable projects that were very appealing to the Senator's office. Other opportunities at the same time are drainage improvements at the Tewinkle Athletic Complex and the potential of adding batting cages to the area. Next up is $2 million, again from Senator Min's office. This is for repairs at Tewinkle Lakes. There's eroded shoreline, there's daily water loss, some significant water loss. There's some outdated pumping and water management systems. So this project would improve all of that. It would replace the lake liner. It would enhance the water treatment ability. It would upgrade the pumping system. It would also add some enhanced landscaping and other features. Right now, as you may be aware, that the ducks and geese kind of run that area of the park. One of the goals that we're taking advantage of in this restoration is to try to work a way to naturally separate the ducks and geese from the humans, or at least minimize the contact so that the rest of the park can be utilized for the residents, and we can kind of have the ducks directed to one general area. Next up would be the Phase 2 projects. The first up is the Costa Mesa Country Club improvements. It's in need of several improvements in facilities and the golf course as well. There's ideas to reconfigure and refurbish the indoor and outdoor spaces, potentially add public venues or improve the existing public venues, which we hope would generate additional revenues by making those improvements. The golf course also needs some additional improvements to both existing cart paths and the construction of new cart paths, and then just general refurbishment of bunkers and the replacement of safety netting. Next, we have Brentwood Park improvements. $400,000 originally, or $400,000 additional funding, will bring a total of $650,000. Project aims to revitalize the park and include improved amenities, upgrade the playground equipment, improve landscape, add some walkways and accessibility, replace the existing shelter, replace the existing park lighting with LED lighting, and look at also upgrading some other additional park facility or amenities. And with that, I'll turn it over to Director Seth Rahman for additional information.
Thank you, Rob. So the other document that's in your attachment is in the staff report attachment is the 5-year CIP. The 5-year CIP includes projects that are deferred or projects that are proposed in upcoming fiscal years. Now, this 5-year plan for parks especially will be updated following completion of the open space and Fairview Park master plans. I mean, that will provide a guide or blueprint for us on what we should program for the next upcoming fiscal years. So we'll update that once we have those plans completed. And we also update this annually based on, again, council goals and priorities, input from commissions and committees and community, and also best practices. And then the projects that are listed in years 2 to 5 are for planning purposes only. There is no funding that's allocated for that. It's just for planning purposes. But they're good for grant opportunities. So when we apply for grant, we can mention that it's in our CIP when we apply for a grant, and that gives us some extra points for that. With that, this is a calendar for our CIP as well as the budget. So we had held a series of meetings on our budget so far. Today, it's with you. On May 22nd, we are going to Planning Commission, and then in June, we'll be going to City Council for the adoption of the operating and capital improvement program budget. I think that's my last slide, so if you have any questions, we'll be happy to answer.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Director Sethuraman and team. That was an excellent presentation. I think we have some members of the public that would like to share your input on this. We'd love to hear it. So if it's okay with the commission at this time, we'll open it up for any public comments and then bring it back for commissioner comments and questions. So if there's any members of the public, you have 3 minutes apiece. And just give me a sec to turn on your mic.
Okay. Hello. Good evening. Laura, Ms. Fatua. I have some slides that I wanted to share. I am a mom who was part of the team that collected the 350 signatures for the petition to update Brentwood Park, and wanted to thank the committee for allotting $400,000 to update the playground equipment. As you can see from some of the pictures, the park is heavily utilized by the under 5 crowd, the toddler crowd. The existing playground or equipment structure is designated for 5 to 12-year-olds. During the day, it's really hot, so a lot of what the toddlers do is play either under the equipment, and that's just showing that there's actually no ADA compliant seating. My father-in-law, who's here, who's a disabled Vietnam veteran, doesn't even have appropriate seating to watch his grandchildren play. And if you can go to the next slide, or the next picture, this is just the volleyball net that's heavily utilized as the toddlers, as their play structure. So we were hoping that you could utilize that space that's in the shade and not really, and if you wonder why, I think Director Minter was wondering why the volleyball nets are always in such ratted shape. I think that's because they're using that as their play structure. And that's just a picture of the picnic table that was implemented to give some additional seating, and it's heavily utilized to eat lunch there, is what parks are used for. So thank you, it's really needed. We really need to just update the playground equipment for the families that live around there, and there's a lot of families, and if you build it, we will definitely be there in spades. So thank you for taking that on, in addition to all the wonderful funding and grants that you've been given this year. That's it, thanks. And Seiji, do you want to say anything? Would you like to tell them what you'd like to see at the park?
I would really like swings.
All right, thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing your input with us tonight.
Commissioners, Chair and Vice Chair, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak. I'm the father-in-law today. This is in regards to Brentwood Park. I'm speaking on behalf of my 3 granddaughters, 2 of them, which you're hearing, making a bunch of noise, 2 of them. My 3 granddaughters are in walking distance within Brentwood Park. They're 2, 6, and 7. And as a service-disabled Vietnam vet, the park and its playground offer several deterrents for people like me with mobility issues who can't easily sit down on the ground or even get across the terrain. So if you could please include some ADA-compliant bench seating and a pathway from Monte Vista into the playground. It's a long area there. And more importantly, maybe add some engaging equipment so the kids can have more fun. That's all. Thank you.
Well, wonderful. Thank you for your input as well.
Hello, good evening. I'm a Costa Mesa resident and a father. I'm here to support the Brentwood Park improvements. And I think we have a great opportunity to help some of the children in that area by updating and modernizing the equipment there. It's pretty outdated. The equipment looks like it's maybe 30 or 40 years old. As they mentioned, there's no swings, there's nowhere to sit down. The sand is a mix of like half dirt, half sand. So I'm hoping that the commission will approve the $400K in the budget. And my understanding is there's also $250K from last year that wasn't used. It's going to be rolled over. So I'm expecting the total to be $650K for Brentwood Park. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing your input. It looks like there's no more members of the public to comment in the chambers. Ms. Fatua, is there anybody on Zoom that would like to comment?
Yes, I have Amy G. Amy G, you may now speak.
Hi, everyone. Amy Onizuka, a longtime Costa Mesa resident. And I just want to thank the committee. The neighborhood is so excited to see Brentwood made the list. It's a wonderful, wonderful space that's desperately in need of some TLC. So I just hope it gets done while my 3 kids are still young enough to enjoy the space. Thanks, everyone.
I have now Sheila Lang. Sheila Lang, you may now speak.
Great, thank you. I'm also a Costa Mesa resident in walking distance of Brentwood Park, and I also wanted to just express my gratitude and excitement. There's been moms talking and word of mouth is spreading that we are going to get some new equipment. So there's just a lot of excitement in the community. So I have 2 young kids myself and would definitely take advantage of it. All the ideas that have been shared with swings and seating and walk paths, those all sound really great. So I just wanted to kind of share my support, share my excitement, and tell you guys how much it really does mean to the residents in the area. And that was all.
I have Christina Fabian. Christina Fabian, you may now speak.
Hello, thank you so much, Director Mentor and Council. I wanted to take my time tonight to say thank you so much for including Brentwood Park in the CIP budget for this fiscal year. I'm really excited for the opportunity to use those additional $400K to see a park improvement happen. I know all of the local residents and families with young ones are also very excited and have spent a lot of time at the park gathering with their family, friends. And a lot of kids are really excited to see the swings and a lot more new climbing structures and play equipment that is geared towards 2 to 5-year-olds and 5 to 12-year-olds. So we just wanted to take the time tonight to say thank you so much for hearing us out, listening to us the last 2.5 years and being such strong supporters of our cause. We are very, very grateful to you all. So thank you.
I have Jessica. Jessica, you may now speak. Jessica, you can unmute yourself. She's... Jessica?
Technical difficulties are always fun.
I have someone else. We can try her out at a later time.
Let's do that. Thank you.
I have Gavin Fabian.
Hi, Council. I just wanted to say thank you for all the work being put into updating the park. I'm a local walking distance to the park, and the pictures that were shared in the that Amy shared earlier just speak 1,000 words. The swings and just the volleyball court and all that are pretty tough, or the lack thereof, and my daughters are super pumped for and really all her friends for the park to get updated. So thank you.
Jessica, you may now speak.
All right, Jessica, this is your last chance. We're going to have to move on. No. Well, Jessica, you can always email us. I know Director Minter, the whole team is very responsive via email, so we are fortunate to have a responsive city staff. So please email us. Let's give it one more try, shall we? If you can unmute yourself.
press star 9, or I mean, sorry, star 6 if you are on the phone. No.
All right, no luck. Well, Jessica, please do email us, and thank you again for joining us tonight. Is that our last public comment, Ms. Fatua? Awesome. So we'll close public comments at this point. Really appreciate your public input, your engagement, your advocacy. It makes a world of a difference. I do want to clarify on our city council's behalf, we are not the city council. We do serve at the pleasure of the city council, but we are fortunate to have a city council that's been a champion for our parks and collaborating with our elected officials at all levels of government to bring home this funding. So it's a really exciting time in the city of Costa Mesa. And with that, let's hear our commissioner input for your comments and questions. Commissioner Wall, go ahead.
Just a quick observation to the gentleman that's a Vietnam veteran. You're speaking to another one. So from here, Semper Fi, and do keep us advised on whatever it is that you want to see happen at Brentwood that would be ADA compliant, would be helpful to you, and being able to sit and watch your grandkids. I think that's cool.
Thank you, Commissioner Wall. Commissioner Wright, go ahead.
Yes, I'll just comment or respond on the Brentwood Park as well. I have a few friends that live in the area, and I think my personal Brentwood light bulb moment was trying to push a stroller across the entire park. So I'm really excited to see the increase in the funding as well. I'm in full support of it, and what stood out to me was the need for a walkway, and even possibly, you know, there's almost like an enchanted forest vibe on where the trees are, and so almost along there or behind, I think would be amazing. And yeah, I think this group of, I would say, grassroots organizers, I'm just really impressed. I thank you all for your time and effort, and this is exactly the type of, you know, community engagement that we want to see on all our parks. And so at times, I find it surprising that Ketchum and Shalimar are at the same degree of degradation that Brentwood has undergone, yet you can see how in the difference of demographics, some can come to meetings, some can organize, and others, it's best for us to go to them. And so I do think that that's a really interesting part of this role, is seeing how parks in West Side can go neglected, and we really need to be active in our outreach to them. Whereas a neglected park in East Side, we see this amazing coalition of parents that have come together and given us an idea of what they're looking for. And so I'm really excited to see all the projects get done. I think what would be helpful while our Brentwood listeners are here is, could we clarify, for expectation's sake, the difference and what does it mean that it's categorized as a phase 2? I think that'd be great.
Yeah, Commissioner Wright, the phase 2 means it's just that we're going to be a little delayed in initiating that project. We want to get the phase 1 projects off to a good start. So with that, you know, like we already had committee meetings, or we're going to have more committee meetings on some of these projects, like at Shalimar and Ketchum Leibold. And once we know that we are on a path, then we can focus our attention on other projects.
So phase 1, say a year, 2 years, and then phase 2 would commence once those are completed. I know it's hard to put a time on it.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about that long time delays. I'm thinking phase 1 is between now and 9 months or so, you know, to get them underway, and then we can initiate sometime early next year is when we initiate the phase 2 projects.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you.
So if I may, just to follow up on Chan's comment, is it possible that there could be an overlap? In other words, you don't have to finish phase 1, then start phase 2. If there's room time-wise to overlap the two, that way phase 2 doesn't feel like you're being delayed unnecessarily. And that would be ideal. And again, still trying to get a feel for timelines at the city. That's just a question that I have.
Yes, Commissioner Wall, that's exactly, yeah, we will be overlapping projects.
Thanks.
Actually, I have deep concerns about Phase 1 and Phase 2 identified. So, you know, Brentwood Park has been waiting for over a decade from prior plans and funding that keeps getting pulled. So I hope in some of the grants there can be project management that can hire outside. I know we can walk and chew gun at the same time. These community members, not just the little kids and the new people, but some have been there 10 and 15 years, have been waiting for this park to be funded. It has been on the docket each and every year, and it's been pushed aside. So I have grave concern that Brentwood Park is in Phase 2, and I understand that there's grant timelines, but the community, and I recognize the reason the community is so organized, part of it is because it's a little higher demographics. Part of it is that they've been organizing for over a decade. And so you have some fresh people that have realized that there's been a design. So I'm hoping that we can use some of the grant money to have Phase 1 be project managed, maybe outside experts, so that Phase 2 doesn't, I mean, if it says 9 months, to me it's 15, 16 months. And that's, to me, not only is it not fair, that's not representative of what this budget really should be. And I noticed that the 250, so they thought the planning was going to start before we even had these grants, and we're here rolling it over. And I appreciate there's an extra 400,000 because there's some infrastructure that has to be addressed, some drainage, some, you know, as we know, it's ADA. We know that there needs to be some more infrastructure that's beyond the play equipment. So I, representing that area, would really like the city to figure out how to do, and I understand we can't do everything all at once, but there is some money in the grants to hire outside expertise so that we can focus on especially Brentwood Park, who's been waiting, and they have been waiting, and they've been waiting. So I don't think, and I understand that because we have to show grant money, having someone who's raised grant money, but I really am very concerned this Phase 2 is going to end up being 2 and 3 fiscal years, and that is not okay. So I would love, we'll have a conversation more about community input, and they've been waiting now 12 months to have community input. So 12-month delay does, just to start talking, we've had some wonderful families come forward and do their own research, do their own time, do their own travel, because they have the means to do that to support this project. So they've been waiting almost 12 months to give this input officially. And we have some community members who have been afraid their voices have not been heard, to now the detriment where you might have some conflicts that weren't existing 12 months ago. So I have some really deep concerns about this process and how this is being put on Phase 2. And that the 650 should really be moved in, and it's great because there's some recognition during this time that it's beyond play equipment, it's beyond swings, and it's really a lot of infrastructure that we're on the original plans that were pulled off. So that's my first comment. The other one, I want to talk a little bit about Fairview Park. I have a question. I'm looking at fencing, signage, trail restoration, which is part of the city project, not the Dave Men's wonderful grant. So if I'm looking at right, is when you talk about the proposal for on the educational hubs and signage, I'll meet tomorrow, but from what I've been understanding, this is a really integral part about how to redesign Fairview Park for use, proper use, and to educate the amazing jewel we have there that we've been abusing before, even before the city was given it, would you say? It was a trash dump. I mean, I have to tell you, it's just, we were not well protecting it, me included, because I didn't recognize its jewel, and it's part of the ecosystem that we have. So I see here there's $90,000, and I know there goes over, so I hope that is actually spent this year in designation and installation. Then the fencing, signage, and trail restoration, because my understanding is that's really critical to begin the saving of the park, is reorganizing the community who uses it. They want to use it well, they want to use it properly, they want to save the fairy shrimp and making sure the burrow owls, which are really much more endangered now. And so if I'm looking here, we have 150,000 from the prior year, 150,000, so it's actually 300,000 that we should expect the Fairview Park to be to be part of their design plan. Am I correct in that it rolls over? I know there's a whole future that reaches 675,000, but is that 150 on Fairview fencing, is that the same 150 or is that a cumulative 150? That's my question.
Yes, Commissioner, this is an additional 150,000 for this
For
upcoming
that
fiscal
section.
year. Yep.
So they should anticipate 300,000 that will be spent on the fencing, signage, and trail restorations. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. And that's it for my questions. This is exciting, but I think we have great resources, and I think there's a wonderful opportunity to have the city hire the expertise short term to get this done. I have faith in everybody. We have the most fabulous staff in the entire country, not even our county, and I know this can get done well. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Vice Chair. Down in District 4, I'd like
Chair
to...
Rutherford, can I add one more thought
Please,
on
go ahead.
Brentwood and to respond to Commissioner Dorn Parker? So if our unique role is to be the space for specifically like public engagement and really hearing from the people on projects, I think that there is a compelling enough reason here and enough organizing and patience, as you've said, to formally make a suggestion or a support to council that we would like them to explore how we could possibly move Brentwood up from phase 2 to phase 1. Whether it's contractors, project management, that's up to them ultimately. But if this is our unique role, is to really be the voice of the feedback we're receiving, and if you think that that would be a plausible, or if the chair thinks that would be a plausible suggestion that we can formally make to council, I would like to entertain that as a suggestion.
I agree. I think it's a good idea. I have some thoughts to share as well, but I do want to give dibs to our District 4 Commissioner.
So I realized that we were given this flyer for Shalimar Park on May 3rd, and that was 3 days before the actual meeting. I wasn't aware of it. Maybe it's my fault for not asking, but I do definitely want to make sure that you guys are aware that we are part of this community. We know people within our community more than maybe you think. And I realized that within those 3 days, I actually had to make a meeting with the mothers in our community. Everybody you saw there, I had 3 days to let them know that this was going to happen. If it wasn't for that, and just to show up one Saturday, I was in Labors of Love, which we do once the first Saturday of every month. And some of the mothers actually had to skip their work to come and talk about what their thoughts are. Now we have May 20th, which is a great, lead. Now we have time to plan. But if you really want to reach out and talk to the community, give us a heads up. Talk to us, listen to us. Because if we push this too fast, it's gonna be like before. I've been there for almost 19 years, going for 20 years. Well, I've been there 19 years, almost going for 20 years. If I take you back to the time when I was raised, I mean, it was bad. It was terrible. I've seen stabbings. I've seen shootings. I've heard shootings. I mean, it's because before when this was constructed the first time for the park, it was in collaboration with Think Together. But there was only 3 individuals in the board that made that decision. And it was because there was 3 items that they had to choose from. Believe it or not, from the 3 members that were on that board, none of them lived in Shalimar. So we have to take a different approach now that we can, and we have time, we have the fundings, but you have to use us as commissioners to bring those people together, bring those ideas. And we do have a lot of leaders in Shalimar, Wallace, James, 18th Street, Placentia, Pomona. All these are part of Shalimar. It's not just Shalimar, which is about 1,015 residents. Only 50 people were there at most. 50 people showed up. We can definitely do better, I think. So let's try to take a different approach. If I can help in any way, and I've said this before, please reach out to me. I can give you my phone number, my email, my city email, whatever you need, and we can collaborate to try to make this so that we take ownership of these parks. and that way they'll last. Because if we get $5 million and just you don't allow the community to be part of it, it's just gonna crumble. That's my opinion. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate your feedback. Commissioner Brown, go ahead.
Hi, good evening. I just want to apologize for being late. And could the minutes reflect, though, that I came in at like 6:30-ish? Thank you. My daughter had open house tonight, and she was part of a writing contest, and we found out who won. So it was a very exciting. She won second place. We were very proud. It was a really great event. So I'm sorry I'm late. I have a few questions of clarification, if I may, and then some comments. But I would like to get the questions answered first, just so I know like the boundaries of where I'm working. So a couple of, well, three questions of clarification. The first is there room for ideas that are not in what you've presented? So is it that we're coming today to talk about what's in front of us, or is there space to think outside of what's been proposed? So that's question number one. Question number two is I would be curious to know if we have a sense of the master plan. And an estimated date for that, just so we're thinking about the various phases. So that gives us an opportunity to think forward in a way that's practical. And then the third question is, and again, I have some points to make, but I would be curious to know from the staff perspective, and this actually does get to the next agenda item about engagement. Are there aspects of what you've presented that you would like particular feedback on? Like, are there particular things that you're thinking about as we sit here, or is it just a kind of general? What do you think about this? So those are my three questions of clarification.
Okay, I'll start with the first one, and then Director Minter can talk about the second one, and then maybe we can both chime on the third one. So you can propose your ideas too. Definitely, we'll include that as recommendations from the Commission to the Council for their consideration in June, and see where it goes. With that, on the open space master plan?
Well, I will follow up. I think over the course of a year, the Commission gets feedback from other individuals throughout the community, whether it be through a meeting or separate outreach. I know as a staff, we've gotten requests from different parents for improvements at Wilson Park or Moon Park or anything. So I think, to Director Sethuraman's point, if there are other projects that you as commissioners are aware of that you would like to get recognized, whether it be in the first year of the CIP or somewhere in the next 5, it's definitely something that we would like you to put in the record if you think it's something that should be considered. So we have 30 parks. Not all of them have playgrounds. I think, when you look at the ones that have been recently replaced, there's probably still quite a few that are in need of replacement. The average life expectancy is 20 to 25 years for most of them. So yes, there's definitely a lot of needs. There's requests for pickleball. The Commission can choose to support pickleball if there's pickleball locations or community garden locations. So this is a time for input, whether it be from the community or from the community through the Commission based on what you've heard over the last year. Obviously, if you looked at the calendar that was on the PowerPoint presentation, there is a long, tedious process that Director Sethuraman goes through in presenting this to different bodies, all of them which may have separate input. When you have a community like Brentwood that shows up in support of a singular project, it obviously, gets more attention along, each step of the way. So, we do encourage you to bring up issues that you may not have seen, understanding that even if it doesn't happen this year, it's something that can happen in future years. As the Parks Director, seeing over $15 million allocated to Parks projects it's like Christmas and New Year's and Halloween and Easter and 4 of my birthdays, all in the same year. So it's a huge number, and we're super excited about it. I am cautious not to look the gift horse in the mouth and say, well, thanks for the 15 million, but I want another million for these other projects. I think the timing and all that, we're going to do the best we can to use the staff time that we have available, if it's consultants that are available, to get these projects done as quickly as possible. But I think there's, no limit to the projects that we can include as potential funded projects for the CIP. I think typically we have our Park Development Fund, which is a a fee that's assessed to developers. Development has slowed over the years, obviously, so that fund is one that usually covers park projects. Because that fund has been, depleted over the years, that, we haven't had access to that type of money that could be used for some of these projects. So there's another factor there, which is why, big projects like Fairview Park are going to be the huge beneficiary of the Dave money, that we may not have had that type of money to put towards those much needed projects. From the public safety perspective, when you talk about the bluffs, to just protecting the natural resources there at Fairview Park. So that is a big component of it. As Director Sethuraman mentioned, the sustainability impacts that the Senator's office was looking for in terms of LED lighting, so that wasn't really negotiable. So, all of these things play in. We talked about, okay, what about other fields that may need, or other parks that need LED lighting? So it can go just about anywhere. For the open space or the recreational master plan, I am excited to report that I did get a draft back that incorporated the changes that staff had submitted, and that was through my review of the report with a variety of different departments. That doesn't mean that it's quite done yet, but we are making progress, and that was a big step is to do, because there were wholesale changes. And when you sit up here, think of the 4 years that you may be in this term as commission, all the things that will happen over the course of 4 years. That's basically how long it sat idle, that we had to try to find all of the answers to the questions that were in there. Just another point to keep in mind, the open space master plan is not a budget document. It does not necessarily put together a plan saying X, Y, and Z need to happen. It's more about feedback from the community that was received back in 2017, 2018, incorporating that with some other metrics, demographics, things like that, and kind of recommendations for some park and open space related matters, but also things like programming and lack of programming on the recreational side. So just remember that that plan is not simply limited to open space. Your last question was?
About if there's, are there particular questions that you have of us, or areas in which you would like us to weigh in? I mean, I have my thoughts, but I think it's important that some of that engagement, if you will, comes from you in terms of we would love, in particular, we've been grappling with issue X. How do you think about that?
I think the process is long, and it starts, November as Raja and team start gathering and looking at the previous, 5-year CIP and what's upcoming, what progress have been made. There's projects like T-Winkle that did come before the commission a year and a half ago, that, there has been design process going on. There has been progress in a way, but still waiting that funding to finally push it over the hump. So, those things may shift or change. I think when it comes to the presentation, Raja may have his own thoughts, but, it really is about what you as the commissioners see. I think the idea or the concept of Brentwood Park, can we push that out of, tier 2 into tier, or phase 2 into phase 1? I think those are great suggestions based on the community feedback. But I also think that what we're looking for from you is there anything else that you've heard of that we are unaware of that should be pushed or at least made present in the 5-year CIP? I think that's what each of you is representing your different districts or different district elected council people is there anything that we're missing as staff that isn't getting through our communication channels? And I don't know if Raja wants to add on.
Yeah, thank you, Director Minter. And with respect to any input on these specific projects, we will come back to you down the road on these projects, make to let you know what the community feedback was on our meetings, and share concept plans, and then get more input on those projects. So as we go through the project implementation phase, we will come back to you on these specific projects. But if there are any other ideas, let us know. And as Director Minter mentioned, for the grant projects, there are specific criteria and guidelines that we have to follow, and we have to stay within that guardrails. So just want to point that out.
And I think the 5-year CIP, it's very important to note, and I have it pulled up on my screen, the 5-year plan that you see is not what's being approved. That's conceptual at this point. I don't know, Raja, if you want to go into any more detail on the funding numbers that are identified there are not set in stone anywhere after the current fiscal year 23-24. So it's placeholders, it's things, I don't know what term you use, Raja, but it's not guaranteed money.
Yeah, those are for planning purposes. It's approved list of projects, but not approved funding for the projects.
So if there are projects that you see in there that may not have funding assigned to them in year one, you can also make comments on the 5-year to say, hey, you know what, I see this isn't funded until 25, 26. Is there a way to bring that up? Or, that's other input that we're open to at this time.
Thank you. That's really helpful to have these answers. One thing I do want to, so I have a few thoughts to share. The first is around Fairview Park, which I'm really excited about and hugely supportive, and hearing you talk about it too, and remembering the history of it, long predating my arrival in town. It's fascinating, and actually the history is really, really interesting, the long history of it. I think as much as we can do around communications for that, the better. And by that, I mean the signage. I think if there is an opportunity to contract with somebody, an external vendor who is well-versed in how to do engaging public history, if you will, in public spaces, that would be a huge benefit for Fairview Park. Also, in thinking about the and I know we've talked about this at a Fairview Park, but I haven't said it here, thinking about the ecological history of it, I think that the signage is a really great opportunity to get people to invest in that space. It also will be a great way, the communications angle, to think about engaging different groups of people, like how kids, small groups of kids engage it, how parents, how, exercise people. That strikes me as an opportunity for us to do a sort of a community service, in terms of educating about the parks. I'm really excited about that. And if it means going outside and hiring somebody who's really well-versed in doing it, I hugely support that.
If I could, I'll have Kelly, can you speak to where we're at in the master plan process and how some of the core team members of the consultant will help us with that process?
Yes, thank you, Director Minter, and thank you, Commissioner Brown. That's a great question, and it's something we're really trying to make sure that those two, the project and the master plan update mesh and are fluid and kind of, they're consistent with one another. So the master plan has a little more binding nature to it. It has environmental documentation. It has a CEQA review process just for that plan alone. So that's a really important way of getting in feedback into what the final product of the park should be for the community members that are interested in providing that feedback. But yes, I think it's a great idea to hire a specialist for getting the messaging out to the various audiences that recreate at the park, that may not know what's really around them, that may not be aware of that fascinating cultural history and the ecological history, as well as how those two things tie into one another. So,
and beyond the park, right? Because it took me a very long time to get there. I will say that I lived here for many years without going because I didn't know what I was missing, right? So something around that, which I won't go off tonight, but I think that utilizing our social media and other forms of communication, it's just, there's a wealth of resources here that I think we could do a lot of work communicating. So I'm glad to hear that. I really appreciate the Brentwood Park folks coming out and sharing your perspectives very, very much. And I will acknowledge I'm super envious of what you all have. I've lived in a neighborhood, I'm very supportive of all of the requests for Brentwood Park, and I hope we can move it up to Tier 1. I'll just share my experience. I'm in District 5, and I know one of our goals, I hope, should be that every resident can walk to a park in 10 minutes. I mean, when I was raising my daughter, the closest park was about 1.2 miles away. We had to cross Harbor. We had to cross 19th to get over to the big park. And when you have like a 2 or 3-year-old, it's like, I don't know, we're just going to drive. We're just going to get over there. I was really always envious about the neighborhood parks. So we would go into other neighborhoods and we would go use the neighborhood parks. But I raise this because in my district, there is a lack of green space where I live. And I would argue strongly that even with the wealth of parks that we have in Costa Mesa, there are certain neighborhoods where we don't have anything. And I mean anything. There is no green space. So one, I hope for folks like me that it's a goal of ours that we should be able to walk to a park in at least 10 minutes. And then I think for those of us who live in those neighborhoods without green space in the interim, how do we think about doing community services in a way that extends beyond the park, right? Can you bring the park to us? Are there creative ways for you to bring those activities into my space so that I feel like I live in a neighborhood too? There are kids in my neighborhood. They would love that, but none of that happens, right? So how do we think creatively about that? And then along with that, what is our long-term strategy for creating green space in those areas without any green space? Because otherwise, I and the person who comes after me, I'm going to be sitting up here supporting others, and I do, because I think that's really important, but it doesn't directly impact the people in my neighborhood, which is like a good mile and a half, right? So that's something that I would put out there. And I guess along with that, a sort of different iteration would be, what are our short and long-term strategies to improve access to open space and recreation? Is that something that we could talk about at some point? Like, I know we have very specific projects here, but it does raise the issue around strategy. And so thinking about those without, in addition to those with. So a couple of things, and then one last point, and this is actually kind of a closed loop point, but if we limit our community services to just existing parks, one of the things that we're doing is we're doubling down on the inequalities that exist in those areas without. And so I would like that to just be on the record, that if we're comfortable with that, then I think we continue with what's in front of us. But if it's important to us that everybody can walk to a park in 10 minutes, then I think we need to reprioritize. I mean, I'm not going to say don't improve the golf course, but I am just going to say we don't have any green space in my neighborhood, right? So if you were to talk to the folks in my neighborhood, that would be a priority for us. I think those are my comments for now.
Comment to Commissioner Brown. One of the areas historically in neighborhoods without official parks has been joint use of Newport Mesa. Talk about large fields. So one of the things when I got on this board, because I have so much experience in the public school space, and I'm happy to help, like you're happy to help, we haven't had a shared joint use agreement, and we have a wonderful Newport Mesa board now, especially in the underpark, the very severely underpark. I think that's not expensive. It takes staff time. So again, we might have to hire some outside expertise to begin working with Newport Mesa to, especially everything got shut down. A lot of those open spaces got closed down and locked up. So one of the things, you have a really new board in Newport Mesa that's turned over in 6 years. One of the areas I would love to see, which really would immediately, with not a huge amount of investment, is to begin these joint use agreement discussions. How do we use the green spaces after school? How do we, as a system and as organized sports and organized cities, because that was really very, very pervasive when I was helping my little guys who are now in their 30s. When I was serving as president of the Newport Harbor Baseball, we really worked together with the school district and with these organized and the city, both Newport Beach and Costa Mesa Community Services, to engage in these taxpayer public spaces for shared use. That is, to me, a goal which is beyond the capital improvements. These are existing spaces which are ample in a lot of these neighborhoods. That's the only green space we have. So I agree with you. I will help in any way. I know staff is very overwhelmed, but there has to be a way that we can begin to reach out, because I know I reached out to my school board member because of Harper. And I know that Ashley, and I know some of these other ones that you all work with, is to begin to have these conversations. They're difficult. Every park person I ever know says, we can't open up the agreement. It takes a lot of work, but without the ability to green space, because now we're at a really bad space. How Brentwood Park got to be so big historically is most of it was a private school and with a pool. And what happened is when it became for sale, the community said, we don't want one more infill development, because that was one thing that was happening in the east side. They took out one farmhouse that had a lot of space, and they would put in 16 homes, and then the infrastructure wasn't answered, from the stuff. So this was when the city purchased and then had that extra green space. But it's hard now to take out a home and especially we're so underhoused. So so I'll stop, because I'm kind of preaching to the choir, but I think there's there's a need to re-engage with the school district because that green space is so precious and available, and figure out how it works best for everybody.
If I could chime in on a few of those things. Those conversations have been ongoing. I'm a part of them about trying to open up some of the West Side school space. You know, like we have our master plans, they have theirs, they're going through too. They have a facilities master plan that they're working on, as well as this campus security master plan that they're working on. So our coordination with the district is really strong right now. Raj and I have a meeting at least monthly with a core team from them. We have a quarterly district meeting that's attended not only by school district staff, but by the water district and sanitation district that are always, you know, helpful in keeping those relationships strong. So yes, those conversations, the updates to the joint use agreement are all underway. Not going to say they're going to be here in a month or two. I know you guys like deadlines, but you know they're continuous conversations, and I think we have a great school superintendent. Dr. Smith has been fantastic when all of our communications with him, and I think the positive steps that we've taken in keeping that relationship strong. You know, I came from an organization that didn't have a strong relationship between the district and the city, and I'm very fortunate to be where I'm at and have the relationship that we do. The 10-minute walk, Monique and I had a long conversation about this. A 10-minute walk to a park is a very simple statement. We have a map that will be included in the Recreation and Open Space Master Plan that shows where you're at. I think you'll be surprised when you see what the map looks like, where the gaps are, because I don't think they're going to be where you expect. I look at it as, and I think the concept of green space was mentioned. Is Shalimar Park green space? There's not a single blade of grass there. I think anything that's green is either, at the top of a tree or a weed growing in a crack. So if that's not the definition of is there grass growing, I think pocket parks are fantastic opportunities, but I do look for something larger on the west side that can serve more purposes than just serving as a pocket park. Not that I want to get rid of the pocket parks we have, but I think big picture, we want to look at more than just pocket parks. I know one of the capital projects, I'm not sure if it showed up, I was looking for it, Director Seth Rahman, the West Side Park development. I thought there was some money put aside, so there's a capital project that they've been pooling money in that we can hopefully use as park acquisition somewhere down the road. So I think, that is one example of a long-term project where, we are looking, long-term at, okay, when properties become available, we want to snatch them up for park space before they get monopolized for housing, which we know is also of great demand, or who knows what else. So I think, when you look at competing priorities between parks and housing, they kind of go hand in hand. If you're adding housing, you want parks. If you're adding parks, you want housing. But what are you taking away? Are we taking away commercial space that adds to, the city's economy? Are we taking away retail space? So everything will have an impact on a built-out city like ours. Mobile recreation, that is one of the programs that we are trying to hire for, because I know you mentioned that. We are trying to get our mobile recreation unit back up and running. I know that was an extremely popular program a few years ago. We are trying to get it up and running. So I don't know if we have any updates on that, Monique, but we can talk about that later in the director's report if you'd like. The golf course, I completely understand. Why are we improving a golf course if there's other parks that have priorities? Well, we do have a golf course fund, and I think, maybe Director Seth Rahman didn't mention, there is a golf course fund that's set up specifically from golf course revenue that can only be used for golf course projects. By using that money to put back improvements to that golf course can generate additional revenue, which does go to the general fund. And the more money that goes to the general fund, the more we can support all of these different priority projects. So I think that's where that money multiplier effect comes into play. We can't spend golf course money on anything else. So that is something that's important to note related to the golf course projects that were listed in the CIP. We also have support from, the golf course manager, because they manage some of those projects too. They don't take as much staff time, but we're definitely in conjunction working with the golf course operator on those projects. I think we answered most of the questions, Commissioner Brown and Commissioner Doran-Parker.
No, I appreciate that. And some of it is just, I don't even need a response to, a lot of what I said was just comments to go on the record, but I appreciate the thorough responses.
Yeah, no, thank you, Commissioner Brown, Vice Chair Dorn Parker. I just want to add too, though, I do appreciate the comments about Brentwood and Westside Parks. The advocacy for Westside Parks is shared by our city council as well, definitely. And I think we should all be proud that the budget we're looking at tonight, that the department's just gone through. I mean, tell me when in the past 20 years, the city of Costa Mesa has invested nearly $5 million in parks in Westside, right? It's never been done, right? So it's a first in, the last few decades. So I think we should be really proud of the direction that we're going in. I do have some comments that I'd like to share on the Brentwood Park project. Raja, I did want to ask, in the context of that discussion, the consultant that's currently doing the scope of work and outreach for Shalimar and Ketchum-Leibold, how hard would it be to add to that scope of work? They're doing that outreach right now, right? They're doing sketches and doing whatever they do as consultants. So would it be that difficult to add just, they're already doing 2 serious scopes of work for park projects as we speak, right? Doing that outreach right now. So could we add to their current scope work that they're underway with right now, the Brentwood Park project, and just bundle that all together versus putting it off to phase 2?
So Chair Rutherford, it's not just the consultant. So the staff has to support the consultant too. What happens is any time we have to have these outreach meetings, you saw the number of staff that were involved in putting that together. So the consultants come and make their presentations or collect comments and go back to the drawing board. But as staff, we have to manage the consultant work and also all the outreach that happens. So it's our staff resources that is a problem right now. And just want to point out, these park projects, I mean, we have so many of them, but then we have a total of 47 or so CIP that's proposed for this fiscal year, for the upcoming fiscal year. And we have almost 90 projects that are carrying over from prior fiscal years. So we have projects like Fire Station 2, Fire Station 4 that we are working on right now. The police firing range, the range that's being remodeled right now. So these are the same staff that will be working on these other projects too. So we are recruiting for more staff, but it's going to take time. I mean, it's going to take about 6 months for us to hire a deputy director that was approved and a senior engineer that was approved. And once we bring more resources on board, that will free up our staff to devote time for other projects too. So it's just how we are managing not just all these projects, the ongoing maintenance that we have to do on all the parks, because that's still there on all the streets that we have to manage. So it's managing all these that's bottleneck right now. I mean, we can bring consultants, but then who's managing the consultants?
Fair point. So I'll see if I can get creative with a question. Is it possible to, you have this really engaged group of community organizers and leaders on the east side, including our vice chair, Commissioner Dorn Parker. Is there a way to empower them to start that outreach for you? They've already done a lot of that legwork, and spare you and your staff some time. Is there a way to empower them to start collecting that and providing that feedback in an organized way?
So Chair Rutherford, on that front, they actually did. So they did quite a bit of outreach already. We met with them too. And so they had a lot of ideas, which we took. And then, when we developed our scope of work and the budget, it was based on our observations and their input. So we actually went through that particular step. It's a matter of now going through the design process, more outreach with the community, because we met with just a selected group of residents, but then we want to broaden that outreach. And then coming back to you with their input, with the design, and then going through the construction process. So it's in some ways it's not it's not that they were not engaged; they're already engaged.
No, and I'm not saying they're not, but I guess I'm wondering, they've already been very engaged and done that
Yes.
legwork. It sounds like you've reviewed the results of that legwork.
Yes.
So if that process has already happened, I guess I'm wondering what's the barrier to getting like a design consultant just started on sketches or starting that process now versus in 9 months, 12 months down the line?
So Chair Rutherford, it's our city manager and our leadership team has determined that we need to make some of these projects in West Side, which have been lagging for a while. We had, for example, the Ketchum Leibold and Shalimar have been on the books actually with some funding over the past two fiscal years actually. But we were not able to move forward until we now have this grant funding that we can use to implement the project. So the understanding is to get these underway, get them to a good place, and then we can jump on these other projects too. So it'll be very quick when we get going. It's not going to be an extensive year effort. It's going to be, we're talking months, not years, to get this through. So it's not a big long delay in getting them.
And I would like to make sure the commission and the community members that have put in their input it is acknowledged. So yes, we have been working together and we're not at square one. We're not waiting for the funding to get approved to have started. As you mentioned, it's been an ongoing process for, a year or more with conversations and evaluations and things that have been done. So, it's getting to the point where we can have someone on board that we can do the design, the official design that includes some of these other, logistical components. So, once the funding is officially approved, that allows us to move forward with the next step. Raj and his team, in addition to doing all these projects, the amount of time they've had to put towards just getting the capital improvement program approved, does take a significant amount of time out of their schedules over the last, 2 to 3 months. So, we are all anxiously looking forward to June 6th, hoping that the council can approve everything and then we can start turning our focus to the money spending part as opposed to all the pre-discussions about design and possibilities and all that stuff. So, we're excited to get to that point too, because that's where the fun starts.
Sure, absolutely. Cool. Well, I appreciate that on Brentwood Park. Continuing the discussion of parks in the west side, I know this was also discussed at the recent city council session, but I think it's actually an excellent idea. I think we've heard it before, but there's city-owned parcels in the heart of the west side, right where we need that park space, along Victoria and intersecting with Pomona, right on either side of Victoria. There's some additional, just like the proposal is to extend Ketchum into the street, right? I think it was an excellent idea. I had the opportunity to speak with Councilmember Chavez and the mayor about it. So I think that's an excellent idea if there's, potential to look at that space. And I'm just saying that just like, some of the funding we got now, this doesn't have to be in the next 3, you can put this in year 5 of the CIP, right? But just put it in there because we are fortunate where our city council does have those, relationships, they're strong advocates, and I think we could potentially leverage that as a grant opportunity down the line. So if we could put that in the 5-year to include that land for development into park space for the west side, that would be my recommendation to include as well, to support the council discussing that. Yes. I also had the opportunity to meet with the chair of the Fairview Park Committee, Andy Campbell, recently. So we had a good discussion, trying to move forward on a good note. He shares some good comments with you, Raja, about the consideration for staging the projects. So I think he has some good expertise to incorporate in that regard. But with that being said, we're spending millions in Fairview Park, right? And have you been to those bathrooms in Fairview Park? What do you think of those bathrooms?
I mean, so as part of the last Love Costa Mesa Day, we did paint those bathrooms, and of course, I mean, they can always keep updating them and making improvements. So,
well, I appreciate that, but they do need more than a coat of paint. So, what is the cost to renovate bathrooms, or just create improvements, that because people notice those immediately, right? It's such it's such a necessary amenity at our parks, and with this amount of funding on the table, could we slice out a little bit for a little bit of renovations at the bathroom? Would that be a big ask, or do you think that lift is possible?
So, Chair, it depends on what renovation we're talking about. If it's changing fixtures, those are simpler ones. But, for example, a new restroom is $500,000 to implement a new restroom. So, if it's just changing fixtures, making a facelift, it's something that we can look into. But again, it's going to be, I'm thinking in the 100,000 range. It's something that we have to budget for. But we'll take that into account.
Okay.
And potentially measure AA impacts if it's any larger, and maintenance is allowable, but if we did a full bathroom renovation, we just have to be aware of any measure AA restrictions.
That was my next question. If it's possible under measure AA, but I would say, if we can't renovate bathrooms under measure AA, I mean,
Maintenance
you gotta be
is
kidding
fine,
me, right?
Yeah, maintenance is fine. It just a refurbishment, as long as it didn't get bigger, taller, things like that.
Okay, cool. Well, I appreciate that discussion and your consideration for those bathrooms. They definitely need our attention. Following up on the discussion of the golf course, I did want to follow up on the mayor's had the suggestion in the past if a restaurant vendor could be solicited through an RFP process to complement the city's investment in the space to really take that restaurant space to the next level from what it is now. So I just wanted to follow up on that consideration. I know the mayor's brought that up in the past. Have you considered that, or would you consider putting out an RFP to bring in a new restaurant vendor, somebody that could really take that space to the next level?
The current agreement that we have with Mesa Verde Partners covers restaurants, so we would either have to modify that agreement, and that would take a request of the full council.
Got it. I mean, if that's the step that needs to happen, though, for this, and I think, at least what I've heard, I don't know if you've heard that, but I think there is demand and interest from the community in that kind of activation improvements to that space. It's used by a certain clientele in our community that, as you mentioned yourself, those investments come right back because it's a public, it's a public facility. So, we benefit from those funds. So I guess I'm wondering, if we can, move aggressively to take that space to the next level.
Well, I think the proper answer is if the council gives us that direction, we will move down that path. But that would be an item that was presented to the council that they voted on and gave us direction to do so in terms of that. So I'm not disagreeing with you, and having been in that bar and been in that coffee shop, I would fully support improvements, and I would love to see our current operator put time and effort into refurbishment of them. So there can be discussions had with Mesa Verde Partners on, what that means for them, and those are definitely things that we've talked about internally. As far as modifications to the agreement, yes, it's a bigger process, and we will definitely take whatever council direction that they provide. So that's something that the commission, as you're tallying all of these things, whoever the maker of the motion is, should be incorporating all of these different thoughts into that motion as part of the recommendation of the Parks and Community Services Commission to the City Council for Raja to take back.
We might have to take a few stabs at that motion. Well, the mayor's strongly supported it. The mayor pro tem strongly supported it. So, I mean, I think with a little more council discussion, but I would certainly support including that as a recommendation for the council to consider. So we've heard a lot about fencing at Fairview Park, and we've talked a lot about the vernal pools, but I'm actually really pleased to see the fencing allocation. It's a serious need. I think actually the first time I met Kelly Dalton at a restoration event, year and a half ago. I think that was one thing we discussed, that there's a need for it there. The fence there is not protective of the space. You know, it's so easy for people to trample over the space. So I do think there's an urgent need for that. We can talk about what's happening in the sky, but we do need to fix the fencing and fix, you know, those physical protections for the space. So I just wanted to ask, what's the timeline on that, and how will the Fairview Park Steering Committee be incorporated in those I know there's a keen interest from them to be incorporated, so I think that's important to have them, you know, move that forward. I don't know that even needs, I assume it wouldn't come back to the commission, but I just wanted to ask, what's the timeline to move that forward and get that done?
Well, let me start. The Fairview Park Master Plan is a critical piece, right, as it will be studying a lot of the diverse areas of the park. And we hesitate to start too much fencing and trail improvements now before the Fairview Master Plan is complete, because we could find that the recommendations are different than what was approved back in 1998 or the subsequent approvals. So Kelly can expand a little bit if he'd like, but you know, we really need to wait for that master plan document. We have the seed money, or we have the money ready to do the signage, to do the trails. But if the studies that are currently being done as a part of that master plan kind of change the configuration, and they're doing great work, and I know Kelly has periodic updates or biweekly updates with the consultant. You know, it's moving along, which is, you know, fantastic news, but it'd be premature for us to start installing fencing until we have a better understanding of what these experts that we're paying, you know, to do these valuable services, you know, will provide us with maps that can kind of show what we should be protecting more than others. So has the watershed changed over the years, or have, you know, all of those things will go into that. So anything you want to add on that, Kelly?
No, nothing substantive, but yes, just to reiterate it, that's a really important piece that we want to make sure that those two elements, or those two activities, are coordinated and complementary. The important piece of, you know, the fencing is that if it's not recognized in the current master plan, then it theoretically has no basis. It can't be implemented without having some presence in the Fairview Park master plan, since it has a listed cultural resources and sensitive biological resources. It needs to go through that vetting process because it has a CEQA document tied to it as well. So.
Got it.
So yeah, we can't do fencing until we get, you know, until we know where to put the fencing. But we agree 100%. We want to improve the fencing, and we want to make sure trail delineation. You know, I think all of the things that have been discussed, you know, at the steering committee, you know, we're excited about that next step too. Is, you know, how do we do interpretive signs? How do we make sure the public knows what they're looking at if they don't see it? So all of that stuff is, you know, if you met this team of scientists and biologists and consultants, it's such an exciting group because they love this stuff. This is what they live and breathe. And having had a chance to do a park walk with them, you know, I don't know if you know any of these people, but it's so enlightening because they're pointing out things that, you know, that I don't see. And I think that's the viewpoint that is going to really help us, you know, take Fairview Park to the level that it needs to be at in terms of community engagement with the people that are using the park.
All right, well, that's the end of my comments and questions this evening. So are there any other commissioner comments or questions, or should we entertain a motion?
I have more.
Go ahead, Commissioner Wright.
I said my Brentwood and all those comments on the front end, and then I wanted to let us discuss before I got into other things. So to start off, I just feel really honored to be a part of this process. I do want to say I know that this is kind of a once-in-a-lifetime amount of funds, and I'm really happy to see with where we landed on the CIP priorities. So whether it's, you know, mirroring what council wanted or the public feedback that I did, I think we landed in a really good place, pretty evenly distributed as far as all of our priorities, while also balancing what, you know, the state senator and Supervisor Foley wanted to prioritize as well. So just to kick that off, I'm really excited to be a part of all of this and continue giving feedback where we're asked of feedback. I have a question about actually how the community feedback events for Ketchum or Shalimar went. Did we see any trends already as far as things they're requesting?
So Commissioner Wright, I'll start off and I'm sure Dr. Minter can add to that too. I think they went relatively well and to kind of respond to Commissioner Garcia-Sarko's comment on the noticing, yeah, we understand that this was a very short notice for the event, but again, we want to take advantage of the fact that we were already there visiting the park and we want to get some feedback, and this was arranged a little bit on a short without much of advance notice. But again, this is the first of many events we will be having at that location and at both locations. To gather more input. We did get good feedback at Shalimar, I felt. I mean, there was a lot of community that came out and gave their feedback, talked about what they're looking for. And at Ketchum-Leibold, I think it was a little sparsely attended, I think, but hopefully we'll get more in the next meetings or so. And down the road, we're going to have a consultant come and do some SketchUps too. So there's something to look at. Right now, they came to the park without any drawings from us. So they just came to give any ideas on what they want to see. But in the next meetings, we will have something. Maybe not at the 20th meeting, but down the road when we have our follow-up meetings, we will have a sketch of some improvements that we can showcase and then start tweaking it.
Just to add a little bit, there were surveys taken. I think there were staff helping both English and Spanish surveys. I would almost defer the Shalimar Park to your fellow commissioners that were in attendance, but I know Shalimar was definitely better attended, and we got a lot of surveys from residents of the community, both in English and Spanish, that the consultant will be using as kind of the starting space. Both of them are relatively small spaces, so we can't put everything into a 0.3 acre or 0.2 acre park, but I think it was a good first step. When I first saw the flyers and I saw the dates, I already knew that I would get grief from all of you about the timing. And sometimes it's coordinating it with council members. We have an engaged council that wanted to be there and trying to work with their schedules, and then other competing dates like Love Costa Mesa Day that's coming up. And so, there were some logistical challenges to getting them scheduled, but there are going to be plenty more outreach opportunities. And I know there's other methods that are currently being used by the consultant to try to engage the community. So I think it was a great first step. Ketchum-Leibold, when we did meetings almost 2 years ago, when we were applying for the grant, we had a decent turnout, but unfortunately nothing happened, and sometimes that can be discouraging to the community. So we really want to double our efforts to try to get back in touch with the people that are in that neighborhood. As for the rest of the Victoria Corridor, that is I think, you brought that up. While we're designing Ketchum-Leibold, while we're getting input from the community, other opportunities or amenities that don't fit in Ketchum-Leibold, we would be looking to try to incorporate along what we're calling the Victoria Corridor. So that is definitely a possibility, being that it's city-owned property, and there are some challenges to it, just, the high speed of travel of cars going up and down Victoria, the proximity to her residence. But I think we definitely want to make use of that acreage for open space.
Can I interrupt just to say, I heard your question as asking for specifics. Were you looking for?
Yeah, I wanted to know if there was any, top 5 most requested features of the new park, but also maybe if there aren't any imageries yet or sketches. Specifically, even Councilmember Chavez, when we toured kind of his whole district, he had mentioned a bunch of kids are always requesting a little soccer field, right?
So that's how I heard your question, and I actually don't have any details from what both of you presented. It sounds like it went well, but I actually don't know what that means. Do you know? I don't know what went well about it. What was some of the feedback? What did the surveys look like? What did we learn from the surveys? Not just even specifically for that park, though I think that's your interest. I'd be curious to know, how did the survey go? Did you get from it what you wanted? What did you want from the survey? And I know we're going to talk about this in a bit, but that's what I would love to know.
Yes,
What?
commissioners, yeah. I mean, now that it happened only on Saturday, so we did not get a chance to look at the results of the survey yet. So those are being compiled, and we'll have more information on that in the next week or so.
So I think some of my takeaways, lighting, improved lighting for the kids that want to use the park at night seem to be consistent. Access to sports, not just soccer, but basketball too, so multi-use court space. Specifically at Shalimar, like I said, it's 0.2 acres. 0.2 acres is really hard to do anything where you're trying to provide, meet the recreational needs of an entire, neighborhood. But I think as creative as we can be, and the consultant, I believe, is in possession of the surveys, and, it will be at multiple meetings before they bring that information. But yes, absolutely, the tally of it, eventually that information will be brought forward.
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in and say, especially to Commissioner Garcia Arcos's point, there's a lot of folks who are still going to provide input. So let's, let them weigh in, and then, definitely that was actually, but to Rob and Raja, I think that was one of the most exciting parts for those of us that were on the commission in 2019, looking at the Lions Park project. It was either your department or their consultant that did include all of the results of the community. It was a big packet to look through, but that was a wonderful aspect of that. So that's I appreciate Commissioner Wright bringing that forward as a consideration.
Yeah, the Lions Park Playground, we did the outreach on that one and incorporated that in the design.
So the kid who requested an airplane park is just thrilled.
Yeah,
Lions Park feedback.
So for the Lions Park, yeah, we did surveys at the meeting, but then we also did online surveys, and we got quite a bit of feedback on that one.
Yeah, I would love to see, a list or something as we go on of just even every local kid's wishes for that park. Okay, so if I'm understanding, as far as the timing with the flyer, it sounds like between consultant schedule, council schedule, other events we have going on, we just figured let's do it when we have an availability. We know it's not ideal, but better than waiting even longer. Does that sound right?
That's correct.
That's great. Thank you. I'm glad to get an idea of that. Okay, kind of just my final thoughts on West Side. So the West Side Park development, kind of over the 5-year budget, looks like it's at over $12 million. I know that's just like an estimate or projections, but I support that, and I think so would my fellow commissioners. And whether it's expanding Shalimar or Ketchum or finding entirely new plots, I would love to continue prioritizing that in our conversations as we look at the open space master plan. I think it's really interesting that Director Minter also mentioned housing and how we're going to be having a lot of change around housing in the next few years as well. And so with the corridors being rezoned and more housing going there, even making sure we're being intentional about that 10-15-minute walk space in light of all the new housing that will be coming up around all the main corridors. So interesting. And then kind of finally, in response to Commissioner Brown's comments, it almost reminds me of this concept of like food deserts, but park deserts, right? And I think I want to thank you for your comments. They almost seem brave to me to call out, nobody here was around when the city was designed 50, 60 years ago. And we can choose to either ignore it or we can acknowledge it, call it out, and make it better. And so the risks are high and complacent, not that anybody is being complacent, but to kind of just be pushing what we already have versus really trying to think outside the box, I think ultimately is like a brave thing to do, and I'm challenged by it creatively, and I would like to continue that conversation. School fields, of course. I do have a question about the joint use agreement process. So I would love to hear, how does that even work? Like, where are we at? What do we need? Can we help coordinate in any sense there? But I even thought about those events where they close streets and they just let kids like bike around, or I was thinking about our bike to school days. Like, if we know that if we're not going to buy a plot of land in a neighborhood for the next 5 years, it would be really, and I think council would love this concept of like, then we're intentionally choosing those neighborhoods for the bike to school days, or for shutting down like a residential block to do, and I don't know, a city-led community services event. So I would have never thought of that if you hadn't brought it up. And so thank you for pushing all of us to be better and go beyond thinking, just looking at what's right in front of us. So yes, joint use agreement. I've heard a lot about this. I've gotten to know some of the amazing Newport Mesa trustees who I know are, excited about this. So how does that process work? I thought we had one. But is it just still in the discussion phase? How does it work?
I think we're kind of getting off topic of the CIP
Yeah, you're right.
to go into JUA discussions, but that is something that as we move forward with our discussions with the district, we can bring updates.
Yeah, or I'll, in your director's report or something. Okay, we'll just note it, or I'll email you later and you can send me a resource on this. Okay, so back to the CIPs. I'm curious about what does it look like to add to the budget for an additional community garden space in the future?
I think in the commissioner, right, I think in our five-year CIP, there may be that item already. Let me look into it.
So
But if not, we can definitely
I
add to
saw
that.
butterfly gardens.
In the master plan update, there was some mention of community gardens as well.
Great, okay. So that's possibly where we'd see it rather than as a CIP.
Yeah, and then the master plan process would be, the community, the commission, the council's engagement in prioritization of the needs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I also felt like it was pretty aligned with something Councilmember Reynolds said 2 days ago about prioritizing spaces for renters specifically. And I just thought about how they shared that almost all of them are renters, and it's so wildly popular. Okay, final thing related to this, on page 43, where it said various projects, playground repairs and replacements, how are those evaluated? So I'm assuming these are just like smaller scale repairs. And is there a chance for public input or requests for their local playground? Or would that just kind of be normal run-of-the-mill? They could put it in on the app.
Commissioner Wright, those are mainly based on staff observations out in the field and prioritized based on need, the age of the equipment, the availability of pieces and parts, and basically it's more of a maintenance, smaller project, replacement of slides and small pieces rather than a whole renovation. So we're not taking apart any of the foundation or removing, or we're just replacing kind of what's there. And I think if you go back to some of those pictures in Brentwood, while you'll see some of the off-color red pieces in some of the photos that were provided, you also see some bright red new pieces that were recently replaced. So that's more along those lines.
That's great. Awesome. In regards to this item, that is all I have. So thank you. I'm excited to see it go into effect. And it's going to be hard to summarize that as a motion for council.
Oh, yeah. Tell me, well, are there any other commissioner comments? Would anybody, I was going to take a stab at a motion, but anybody would like to have first dibs, it's yours.
I'll try.
All right, our esteemed vice chair.
Help me. I'm going to try to make it as broad and specific as possible. But I move that we agree to move forward with the CIP as proposed with these additional input. The first is to review the West Side need for recreation and open space, look at it from a creative standpoint, re-engage what existing projects were, like bringing recreation to the streets. 2 is to review the organizing of the phases 1 to include Brentwood if possible, and look into opportunities to have consultants or staff or outside knowledge to make that possible. 3 is to support the planning of Fairview Park, understanding that first the master plan has to be in place, but then support the concept of use of trails, signs, and bringing in outside expertise. And I think the 4th, but we're going to talk about it, is to also review input of all this wonderful community engagement in a way that makes more sense locally. Did I miss something? Is that good?
No, I thought that was an excellent motion, Vice Chair. My only comment was actually just because I thought it was a very specific and focused discussion at the council study session, you know, and it's been like a general line item since I've been on the commission, right? For almost 5 years, it's just been a general line item. Oh, we need to find more park space in West Side. Oh, you know, more park space, more, right? And I think we should get very specific about that and say, hey, we have this city-owned parcel at the intersection of Victoria and Pomona, and just putting it in the 5 years.
So I'll add to the motion, your friendly amendment, to look at city-owned parcels, in specific to start with the parcel at Victoria and what's the corner?
Victoria and Pomona.
And Pomona, but also to look at the green spaces that the school district has to begin the process or continue the process of shared use agreements so that those can be accessed. I forgot that.
Totally, but that's not a CIP project.
No, that's not a CIP project.
Okay.
You're right. Okay, withdraw that last part. From the motion.
I would second the motion. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. I would add one. Can I make a quick request? I'm sorry, actually, and I forgot to mention this in my questions, but the Belair Community Center asphalt surfacing, I would recommend that a pickleball court be included with that.
Ooh, pickleball striping?
Yeah, because it's in the 1-year CIP to do asphalt surfacing at Belair Community Center, so I'd just include a recommendation.
Well, how about we'll add in that the re-asphalting to also possibly look at striping for pickleball?
So,
but I don't know if that's possible because you're looking for parking. And
the Chair Rutherford and Vice Chair Don Parker.
Okay, I'm going to withdraw
so
that.
pickleball, so the funding right now is specific to the asphalt surfacing and doing minimum improvements. Now, if we want to do pickleball, we might have to go with concrete type of surfacing, which is more expensive. And of course, then the painting and all the other extra costs involved. I mean, you can recommend that, but that means we need more funding.
Okay, never mind.
So I'm going to withdraw that we make, I'll withdraw that last part of that friendly amendment. No friendly amendment for pickleball on the asphalt striping. You're right, you can't do pickleball on asphalt. You can try. We do it on our street, but it's not as good.
You can friendly amend to continue to explore additional pickleball opportunities.
Oh, I'd be appropriate to do that, absolutely, to continue to explore pickleball opportunities as they come up.
Wonderful. I'm so sorry. I'm terrible because I did forget the golf course, exploring the restaurant renovation. Could we include a recommendation for that? As I know the mayor and Mayor Pro Tem are very interested in that, so I do want to just give that the attention it deserves.
We're moving into the range of unfriendly amendments, so I think we moved on from friendlies to unfriendlies.
So, well, but it's part of the CIP existing.
Oh, it is already.
Looking at golf course general improvement. So to continue the discussion with City Council on engaging golf course facilities for additional revenue sources, but that's really not CIP. That's really not CIP. That's not a capital improvement project. So that's an unfriendly amendment. So I won't accept that.
Well,
hey, you guys can vote it down.
I don't appreciate that, actually. We're very friendly up here, so.
Well, those are terms with Robert Rules of Order. So these are not my terms. These are Robert Rules.
Cool. Well, I'll second the motion. Any discussion of the motion?
I think, Laura, do you have a tracking of the motion with amendments?
I was going to rely on the recording to draft it because I do have some.
You might have to go back to the recording, huh?
Yeah, and I was gonna just kind of retract and extract, like, I was gonna do the action minutes for it, so. I have, move to agree additional west side for open space.
Would it be possible to restate the motion for Laura?
Oh, there's no way I
Oh,
can
I'm
restate
so I
that.
think the start would be,
I have the 4 ideas.
to start would be
It was-
the
it was
concurrence with the staff
review
recommendation.
West Side recreation, open space, creativity to bring our existing programs back. 2 is review the phase 1 to see if we can utilize outside consultants and expertise to bring Brentwood into phase 1, to support the planning process of Fairview through their Fairview master plan to include what's in the CIP and use outside expertise to make sure the signage and the pathways. And then what was the 5th one? Oh, the Victoria Promote, to look at existing parcels the city owns, in particular start with Victoria and Pomona Strip.
For example.
For example, to see how to utilize that as green space. And then the other ones were not CIPs. Okay. Very good.
And then the pickleball was the,
Pickleball
in the
is out.
contingent. Okay,
Nope,
great.
nope, it didn't become part of, it was unfriendly. No, I mean, no offense, it's a term.
If you guys can place the motions on the dais for the,
Yeah.
thank you.
And if there's anyone that wants clarification on the motion, please state that before we vote.
Who-
And if we could call the question.
Well, I don't think there's is there a second? Yes, it is. Oh, that's right.
All right, you guys may vote on your dais. Motion carries 6-0 to approve the recommendations by Vice Chair Dorn Parker.
And the CIP overall.
Wonderful. Thank you, Vice Chair Dorn Parker.
Thank you,
Very
everybody.
exciting times for Costa Mesa. So yeah, we just need the city council to approve it and the planning commission, and then we're off to the races. So thank you, Raja, Kelly, Rob, Jason, Monique, everybody. We appreciate all your hard work.
Yeah, thank you for this engaging discussion. Thanks.
Always got to keep it lively here at PAX, right? All right. No, not at all. So that brings us to the, unless anybody would like a break or a bathroom break or anything, that brings us to the second item of new business, which is community outreach. So Director Minter, if you have any comments on this, Commissioner Brown, you can feel free to make any comments as well. I would just kindly ask that we, it's a very general item, so if we could do all we can to keep it a focused discussion with, tangible action items, that would be my request. But I'll turn the floor over to you, Director Minter.
Not too much to add. When staff prepared this report is with the intention of summarizing, very generally what our outreach methods were. They obviously vary project to project, including, last weekend's projects. But I think the point of, the preparation of this item was to, get feedback on additional outreach opportunities and things like that. So with that, I'll turn it over to Monique.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners again. So tonight before you is a very brief overview on various outreach methods used in completing city projects. Now, while this can be a much more intensive, fluid, ongoing conversation, and it's not encompassing of all the detailed outreach on any specific project, which can, like Director Minter said, vary from project to project. I want to note that this report is more specific to the community outreach rather than the final community engagement. Now, while the two are sometimes used interchangeably and they can depend on one another, there are differences in terms of outreach and engagement. So I just kind of wanted to note that. Also, every department in our city handles outreach and engagement separately and together. So depending on what kind of project or program or even policy that we're handling, it could entail every department in the city or just one. So Parks and Community Services is not the end-all be-all on all the community outreach and engagement. As you have heard tonight, Director Seth Raman and Public Works does their own with their consultants, and we work with them too, but we also have constituent services that handles outreach and engagement on separate matters, and sometimes we work together and separately. So like I said, this is not the end-all be-all. It's just a very brief overview, and it's intended to be a discussion tonight to hear your thoughts and get feedback and just hear any new and creative ideas that somebody might have. So with that, open discussion.
Thank you, Monique. We'll turn it over to Commissioner Brown now. She asked for this item to come forward, so I do appreciate your advocacy on that. I appreciate, Monique, your experience in this regard and in putting this report together. So yeah.
I appreciate it, and I couldn't agree more that public outreach is an engagement, and so I actually think that's a great place to start for us. And the report here, I think, is an overview of what outreach has looked like. I wrote that letter just as a way of explaining what I was looking for, and Commissioner Wright, when you were asking about the engagement earlier in terms of the public engagement, I think, it's like there's some details we'd like, and so the ladies from Brentwood Park, it's like you get a really clear sense of what people are looking for, and I think that's both interesting and engaging and like infinitely helpful. So I wrote this, missive, but I just want to make a couple of points, and then I actually want to shut up because I just want to hear from you all. Public engagement, what it is and how to do it isn't obvious. And I just would say that people make careers out of this. And something we might want to consider as a city is that maybe there's a space on city staff to hire somebody who is uniquely trained and has a background in doing public engagement, not outreach, public engagement. And their expertise could be used across a variety of park-specific projects, right? Public engagement for the parks is going to be different than public engagement for the police, let's say. So that's just something to consider. In the entire time I've been on the commission, which is not even 2 years, or maybe just 2 years, we've never talked about public engagement. So it strikes me as something worth talking about. I'm curious about it. I think there's an opportunity for us to get serious about it. And the last thing I'll say is that for me, this is a topic that has to be ongoing. I'm not sure it can be just something we address briefly. And so I would advocate for it to be built into a variety of things that we do, so that there's no like one meeting that's just about public engagement, that it really is built into the fabric of what we do. It's constitutive of the work. I think that would be something that I would argue is super beneficial and would make Costa Mesa really vibrant, because we would have a variety of people participating. And actually, I said I was done, but the other thing to think about is that there is a range of what this can look like. And on the more superficial end, it's about informing the public, right? Informing them about what's coming. You move up a little bit and you're consulting with them. And I think we definitely do a lot of consulting. You move up a little bit and we involve people. And I think we do some involving. But then where it gets really good is then you're collaborating with them. And I think that's like some of what this is, and that's why it's exciting. Sorry, I'm pointing to the women from Brentwood Park, because that is seriously a collaboration, right? And then one step beyond that is empowering people. It's a long road to get there, right? But I think we've even heard that word empower used tonight. So it's a model to consider. There are people who are very well trained to do this, but I will be quiet now, and I would actually love to hear from folks. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Brown. Would you be okay if we open public comment at this point? Awesome. So if there's any members of the public that would like to comment on this item. Awesome. Whoop, let me turn on the mic there.
Thank you. Christina and I and a group of of moms, we did send out a survey, and it was very interesting. The thing that's interesting in parks and playgrounds is that we are representing parents, our constituents, which are our children, right? Like, that's what playgrounds are about. So like, that's why it was so important having our kids there, because as parents, we can say, this is what we want. And the kids are like, we just want some swings. That's really all we want. Can we get some swings, But But a little history about Brentwood is that, the city took possession in 2007. So this has been, you do the math, 2007, so 16 years, right, that you've had this piece of property that has really been underutilized. And to this point neglected. You already did the outreach, I think in 2008, 2009 with the community. They gave a lot of feedback, and then the city decided to not appropriate funds to Brentwood. Specifically, it was given a grant. We had to give the grant money back. It wasn't prioritized. In 2016, the city did a survey. Brentwood got one of the worst reports. 2018, it was pointed out that Brentwood had the worst equipment. It needs to be replaced, Brentwood and Pinkley. So there's been a lot of community input and engagement, and we're willing to do the work. I will go pro bono. I'll be on the task force. I'm willing to, I'm not sitting at home eating bonbons. I can tell you that. We both had babies during a pandemic, and that was really fucking hard. It was, and we didn't have a place to take them and push them in swings. So that's really what started this, was that Brentwood just wants, the kids just want some swings. They don't need a lot. The kids really don't need a lot, and the community members are there to just tell you that, and we're willing to do all the work. But surveys are great. We just did it, SurveyMonkey. If you could get a professional count, that we kind of had to cap off at 40, and then we had to do 2 separate surveys. But there's a lot of people who've lived there long enough that they have all the email information, distro, and we follow the Twitter accounts. I follow all your Instagram accounts who have accounts. Chair Rutherford, I know you do, and I know you follow Brentwood's IG account. So thank you, and I think you can engage that way too. So we're willing to use social media and all the tools and get input that way and engagement that way. So thank you.
Hello, I'm Christina. Wanted to share a little bit about community input, because for me that's been a really fun part of Brentwood Park, and actually the thing that's propelled me most to stay on the bandwagon for 2.5 years. The biggest thing for me that I saw is validating a need. So at first it was like, hey, this park is kind of dilapidated and old, and it was about just asking fellow families that you walk by in the neighborhood, or folks at school at drop-off, hey, have you been to Brentwood Park? And you start to build numbers of folks that feel the same way you do. And that's inspiring and empowers you want to go out and make change. So we took that base and started with 5 people that said Brentwood needed more work, 10 people, 20, and then 350 signatures on a petition. We door knocked to folks in the local neighborhood around the perimeter of Brentwood Park. We talked to families that said, I tried to do this 20 years ago. My daughter now graduated college, and the park still needs to be updated. I talked to a family that their son's first birthday was at Brentwood Park 40 years ago. She lives a block over from me. So you see what a big difference a good park makes in a community to bring people together. And that's why the city of Costa Mesa has spent so much money to purchase the land, because you want to build and facilitate a culture in Costa Mesa where people want to come to. Some of the other things that have been really important in community engagement is hearing people's voices. And that's the biggest thing, is that we really reached out to a lot of folks, and the survey was really thoughtful. I mean, we went through the master plan that you guys put together. We went through kind of a list of all of the items that you guys look to put and scope into a park: picnic benches, play structures, splash pads, sports fields, walks for dogs, what's most important. And we took that collective data to drill down and put feedback in there for folks to voice from a variety, like families that don't have kids. What do they want? What do elderly folks want? They want safe walking trails. They want ways to get outside and talk with their neighbor without worrying about a car that's going to hit them. So there's a lot of nuances, and really, I loved your word, Kelly, collaborative. I think that that's so important, is that you're really looking beyond just your own needs and working then to seek out the needs of the collective group. And that's why I think Amy and I have been so successful and have had such a great group of supporters, because people really felt that energy from us from the get-go, that we really wanted it to be about our community and build something, a legacy for families to come, for grandparents to come and congregate. There's, at Brentwood Park,
there was 100 kids that came out for Halloween last year trick-or-treating and ran down the hill in their costume. Like, it is a meeting point for all of the families there. And so I think that's why we've stayed so hard on this cause to really like see it through to the finish line, and why we're pushing so hard, you know, to Robert Ryan. I know you did a great job with Tanager Park and Jordan Park, and I'm looking at you as our project manager. Like, come on. Sign on the dotted line. We will do everything to support you guys. Community outreach is really about all of the ways that you engage with folks. It's talking in person. I'd say that's number one. It's going out and shaking somebody's hand, looking them in the eye, and asking them, hey, what would you like to see in the park? And that's where we've really grown the effort. And then the surveys were just nice to like get data and all of the research and things that we could grow to build and really get collective feedback for the group. So happy to share more. I could talk about it for a long time. Gets me fired up. So thank you.
No, thank you, ladies, for your input. We really appreciate it. And there's a familiar face.
Hello. I figured I might as well speak up on this item since I'm usually one of the people that's here community engaging the most. So I think it's really important that, you know, people get to speak out on this issue. It's why I'm here. But I think we need to consider that it's a Thursday, it's 8:30 p.m. Like, why? There's 4 people in the audience. Like, we need to make sure that it's not just a PACS Commission meeting and not an Active Transportation Committee meeting. It needs to be going out into the community. That's why I appreciate like the events at the specific locations like Shalimar, Ketchum, Leipold. Just make sure there's more notice for it. Make sure that the notice is in Spanish so that people who can't read English are going to be able to go and access. I think also, like, my mother, she's the only reason that she even knows what's going on in the city is because of me. Without me, she wouldn't have like known anything. So how to get to people like that, how to like reach out and actually engage with them is something that needs to be thought about a lot, because some people might just be apathetic, but some people might just be not as well informed as they could be. So we need to make sure that we're actually informing people about all the things that the city is doing, because there's so much going on. Yeah, so I just want to make sure, don't just expect people to come to these meetings, and make sure that we have everything available to everyone. All right, thank you.
Thank you, David. Any more public commenters, Ms. Fatua?
Yes, I have Charlene Ashendorf. Charlene Ashendorf, you may now speak.
Well, thank you very much. Good evening, lively Chair Rutherford and friendly commissioners. I did want to say a couple of things. That, first of all, kudos to you, Commissioner Dorn Parker. This is what it's all about. You embody a commissioner's role to really pay attention to your neighborhood. I've seen that shortly in the last few months with Commissioner Wright. And so for you, Commissioner Brown, to bring this issue up is really exciting. But in the course of my day, you know, I run into friends and neighbors who comment, what do you mean there's an event somewhere? Or you mean I missed the symphony playing, you know, at the park? Or I didn't know we even had a pool or senior transportation. You get the idea. No matter what we do, there are still people who just don't get the information, like Mr. Martinez said. But you're to be commended for tackling this, and measuring outcomes, in my opinion, will really be important, even though it's a difficult task. I do appreciate some of the reminders, the tools that you know, the staff put together, but events for residents of high density apartments, whether they're at Baker Block or neighborhood associations like Mesa Verde, or tapping into events or partnering with the schools or parent groups, those kinds of school events, or even residential housing where we have a population of seniors, whether it's the tower or people who congregate at the senior center, or even workspaces. We have a lot of opportunity to network instead of just small attended meetings. But as someone who's involved in a lot of volunteer organizations, sat up there with a couple of you commissioners previously, we need to be the one who is the first point of engagement and outreach. We're not seat warmers here. We're the people who need to be ambassadors. Get out the word and look how you can empower other people like you did at Brentwood. So I'm really excited to see how you go forward, and best wishes to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's great to hear from you, Charlene. We appreciate you weighing in. She's chair of the Arts Commission too, everybody.
Chair, there are no other members on Zoom.
Awesome. Thank you, Ms. Fatua. We will close public comment at this point, and bring it back to the commission. Any commissioners would like to weigh in? Yeah, Vice Chair, go ahead.
I really want to thank Commissioner Brown. I hadn't thought about how these different stages go to then have the community own these decisions, which I heard Commissioner Garcia Arcos explain, that he's waiting for the outreach to then create the engagement to then form the collaboration. That the more the community is outreached and invited to engage, then creates the collaboration and the ownership. And I know this was a short window, and I know many of us talked to the Director Minter about the short engagement, but to make sure that the outreach is appropriate by the community you're outreaching to. And it's different than engagement, because if you outreach, it's information. It can be one way, just so they know about events. But if you're inviting engagement, then that's a different level that takes a little bit more thought, as I'm hearing, you know, that's your profession. To then have the community that you're asking for their engagement and their input, to then collaborate with them. And I think that's some of the disconnect. When it's brought forward that this is what staff has spent a lot of time and energy to put together what they know as their expertise on playground and space management, but they haven't necessarily done the work to do the engagement because of staffing or COVID or whatever, then the collaboration breaks off. But I see what happened at Brentwood, and I was very gracious for Chair Charlene to give me, but it's really the community who just asked to be asked and to be asked to be engaged, and we're willing to then now they want to be collaborative partners. So I guess that's the part that I think can be very successful as we're asking this. So thank you for sharing that. And I think a lot of the West Side, what's going on with the engagement, I know the consultant is doing this, is to really think in those steps, because once that community buys in and they've been heard and they're collaborative partners, they take care of the facilities. They then engage in productive outcomes. They see growth and opportunities. Then they also become engaged in the city, serve on commissions and parks, and volunteer at the events. So it's not a one and done. It's really an ongoing wave, I see. And to just keep thinking, because our city is incredible, but there's so many different pieces to it. I mean, when I moved into the East Side, it was just an eclectic mess that most of us loved. It's still kind of an eclectic mess, but that's what we love. But it's different than when you go to a Mesa Verde, which is really structured, planned, and what they need in their outreach and their engagement to become collaborative is really different than what the East Side or even the West Side. You just can't say the West Side. You really need to piece them together because they're different people. So thank you, and I hope this helps, because I know I was very impressed with the staff when the Brentwood citizens came forward and showed the amount of engagement. I know Rob and they were amazed at the number of engaged residents were already involved. And I'd love to see that be the goal each and every time. So, and that's it.
Well, I mean, are there any other commissioners? Commissioner Wright?
Yes, I can jump in. Thank you to the public commenters. Really glad to have you here. Thanks for your feedback, David. I'm also kind of that local government friend to my whole friend group, right? And I have a lot of friends that are parents, and my observation is that there is not a lack of exciting or good work that is occurring. There is just a lack of people knowing about them. And I don't even think that that is to the fault of current staff. I do think there is an apathy towards government and even possibly like legacy communication channels, like flyers, for example. Like, unfortunately, I kind of just throw away all my flyers when they come in the mail, even if it was for the most exciting local park renovation or something. So I agree that I think enhancing this process would be like a worthy challenge to take on. It may be like pushing a rock up the hill, but ultimately the reward would be that it unlocks like truly solving problems for our community members, or really getting to the core of like what people actually want, instead of accidentally wasting like time or money building things that we thought were good ideas but didn't ultimately convert, I suppose. And so as far as specifically like knowing that this report is just like a high level summary, I kind of emailed Director Minter just wanting to know a little bit more about specifically each category, right? So when I read I'm going to use social media. I'm going to use our Costa Mesa Recreation Instagram as a good example. Like, when I read social media, it doesn't really give me an idea of like, what are we posting about? How often is it used? Is it typically, we do a lot in this department, right? So are there any recurring communications that are going on? Is it only on new projects or upcoming events? I would love to see almost like, in my mind, I'm imagining like a table chart. And on the farthest left-hand column, it's every single type of communication channel. And then at the top, it's how often are they used, or like what is the basis that a flyer gets triggered or a social media post gets triggered. Who do they go out to? Is it specifically all residents? Is it people in a specific neighborhood? I've heard about, everyone that lives within a 500-foot radius of a project, they're gonna get a notification or something. And then what are the metrics of success that we're looking for each of these types? Obviously with pen and paper, it's more difficult to track, but yeah, when we're talking about community input events or social media, you can track, surveys you can track. It would be so great if we're going to implement this priority as a process for anything we do moving forward. It'd be really cool to all be in agreement of like, here's how people are going to find out about it. Here's who we want ideally to target, and our goals in collaborating with the public on this specific thing, right? And then on the other hand, I feel like I hear about these like wildly successful programs like the community gardens, how they have like a 2-year wait list. And I just think, I don't know, it would be easier to have basically a framework that we apply to every single major project or event, specifically in regards to community outreach and then community engagement. And then I also just asked for examples of past items we've created. So I've seen the spotlight and I've gotten flyers before and I follow social, but I think to see it all in one place, because then we could actually get into the weeds a little bit more of like, all right, we feel like this is possibly outdated or not accurate, or, we can get a little bit more creative in our feedback there. So yeah, I think as far as like specific things I want to know more about in regards to this item, that's what I would love to, maybe we schedule in the next meeting or the following meeting, a more in-depth report on this. And then the takeaway from there is how can we actually implement it to be not as intense of an agenda item, but more a process that's like woven into anything we already do. Yeah, so those are my thoughts on the overall like processes. I do have actual random community input or community outreach ideas, and maybe I'll just share them now so that it's all in one breath. Okay, so I mean, this is just from my time so far, and I was planning on opening it up to the public for feedback as well. So my first idea is in regards to our roles as commissioners. I think that comes from the place of that's our job really, is to be the ones engaging with the public above and beyond, representing the public. However, we touched on this in the past. I fear that people don't know we exist. They don't know what we do. They don't know what a commission is. I enjoy being a parks commissioner because at least people know what parks and community services means. But I think something really simple that I would love to see changed is our commissioner page on the city website to explain what it is we do and why would it be beneficial to them to like reach out to us, or under what circumstances are we available to them to help them. So I think that's one, just we're already here, we all care a lot. And yeah, so as of now on the commissioner website page, it just says our emails and our names, I believe. And I don't think a normal person would know what to really do with that. Or maybe they'll just spam email all of us hoping someone will respond. Okay, the second one is also related to the website. I've been kind of toying around with this idea of, we had discussed how if Director Minter receives a request on a park via email, he will kind of keep their name on the wait list to continually update them. And I think something that could be more inviting is the ability to see ongoing like project updates on the website outside of these reports. So having to click on either even a council or a PAX commission report and then dig 10 pages to see, okay, what is the update on Brentwood? I think that's too much of a hurdle, once again, for normal people. I mean, the fact that they make it to the city website in the first place is pretty impressive, right? I've even had people message me about like public works requests, and I'm like, yeah, you got to go on the website or you got to download the app, and that's technically an barrier to entry. But so let's just say they do make it to the website. I have this vision for like, you can subscribe for like email updates or newsletter updates on projects that you're interested in. And going that specific, I realize, does require like more effort. So maybe it just even starts with advertising like I know we have the Costa Mesa newsletter, but maybe a parks related newsletter, or heck, I'll start my own newsletter, and it's like, just subscribe to the commissioner's newsletter to get more accessible like updates. So some concept of like subscribing to notifications on projects, so that's not only people that are coming inbound to us. Okay, and then my final kind of outside of the box idea that I really like is, it comes from this notion of like, yes, who is actually available on a Thursday night? 3 people. Or who is actually available on like a Saturday morning, kind of last minute. It's not always, but we're doing our best, right? But what I've noticed, especially like, I was thinking about this with Brentwood, is people are still using Brentwood, and they maybe even have no idea that Brentwood's about to get $600K put into it. And so I kind of had this vision for short-term signage that has QR codes, where it's literally, I'm imagining like a yard sign, right? Nothing fancy. So short-term signage at parks where work is going to be done or something exciting is coming up, and it has QR codes, basically inviting them to provide feedback, because it also naturally filters people that are already using that park at whatever time is convenient for them, right? And then they didn't have to like think of the idea, go on the website, or know one of us and talk to us about it. And this even not only maybe the park that the project is happening at, but I was thinking a lot about how the families that don't go to Brentwood go to Lindbergh. In fact, I've seen a lot of you at Lindbergh. And so even if it was signage up at Lindbergh saying, hey, we're doing really exciting work at the local park. If you live close to here, you live close to Brentwood, and we'd love your feedback. So I think the goal here is to give like minimal effort, but large impact ideas. And yeah, those are the three that I came up with. So I'm curious to hear what you guys think, and hopefully we can make some progress.
I wrote down way more than 3 things, but if you want to call it 3, okay.
Yeah, other than the expanding on the report, the 3 random ideas. Cool.
If I could chime in real quick, just to address some things. Like I mentioned, and we all talked about already, this is a really, really brief overview. And like I said, outreach and engagement is always, it's a continuous, fluid thing, right? Especially as public servants here, and our job is to make sure we're always listening and trying to actively engage our community that we work for. So I just want to mention that sometimes even if you don't see it or hear about it, it doesn't mean that we're not doing it or the engagement isn't there. We have a position in our city, the public affairs manager. I think they're reclassing it to a government affairs manager, but that oversees our PIO department, our CMTV. That's not in our department, but we work really closely with them. We have a website coordinator in our city manager's office as well. So we have a lot of tools and resources and people that do specialize in this that have very high experience and education in these matters. And so we do try to get creative. And I just want to let you know that just because you haven't heard about it, it is there. We do encourage it. We welcome all types of feedback. Just because you don't see somebody in the audience here doesn't mean they're not at home watching on YouTube. That's how I watch council meetings when I'm not able to make them. And you don't necessarily see me there or listening, but I am watching. I do that same thing with the city that I live in. So, I think that's the crucial part of after coming out of the pandemic, we kept the Zoom option for the community, which wasn't always a thing before, right? So little things here and there that obviously this report can go on and on for days. I've taken many classes in college specifically about these topics, and you can go on and be educated and still get new ideas. And I think that's the purpose of this discussion, is to hear your thoughts and ideas and just continue to get better at it, because, 2 minds is greater than 1, 3 is greater than 2, and so forth and so on. So even though we have staff on board and all these departments do conduct outreach and engagement, we look for the feedback from you, the ideas, to keep it going. So the comments that we have here, we've done walks. The senior center supervisor has met with the towers before, but you don't hear about that stuff. She actively engages the community. When we did food distribution and gift cards, we walked the neighborhoods, let them know, in English and Spanish that we're doing this program. And it was more of we try to hit it all. So, and like I said, I just want to reiterate, really, really brief overview, but we welcome the discussion, so.
If I could kind of follow up to that, because, there's the formal networks of communication and the informal, and I think that's one of the things that we as city staff are like, we put it in the spotlight, and it's on our website, and it's on our Instagram page, and we used Peach Jar, through the school district, and we think we're using all the formal things. But I think one of the reasons I think this is a valuable discussion is to work with each of you in your different districts, and the different constituents there about some of those informal networks. I know the neighborhood that I live in the city I live in, we have a WhatsApp page. They didn't choose, Nextdoor or, Instagram chats or whatever, other options are. They chose a WhatsApp page. I learn a lot from that WhatsApp page. Not all that I want to learn. There's stuff that I would rather not know. But, I think that's one of my goals, I think, in having this discussion, is to hear about some of those informal means of communication. I think, the spotlight, we think, we publish 4 times a year, we put a pretty picture on the cover. We want it to be engaging. And, some people don't get their information that way. So I think, Commissioner Garcia, you had said, the the people that you reach in your neighborhood are going to be different than the people we reach. And I think that's what we would like to hopefully glean from this conversation, whether it's this meeting or, each individual opportunity that we bring forward. We can try to summarize that. If we have the next park project or the next Shalimar meeting, here are the methods that we used. We don't always know what happens to the message once we get it to that next layer and it gets into that informal layer of communication. So I think that's an area we can definitely improve because, yeah, I've sat around meetings and we're like, well, we did all these things to try to get the word out, like not realizing the value of some of the informal networks that we just don't have access to. And, anything we can do to enlighten those or to enlighten ourselves of some of those, I think would be very valuable moving forward for all the projects. I mean, some of them are neighborhood focused. Some of them are population. Not everybody wants to know about early childhood education. Not everybody wants to know when the skate park is going to be up for discussion. So it's like trying to reach each of those different populations, and a lot of it is through informal networks of communication. Like nobody spreads word like mothers. Mothers of young children, they can get the word out, quicker than just about any other form of media. So I do appreciate the discussion, and I think some of the suggestions Commissioner Wright made about updating our webpage, I think that seems, that could definitely make sense. I know there was some wording on it, but we'll go back and we'll look at that. But I do appreciate it, and this is something that will be an ongoing conversation, hopefully more project or program specific.
Yeah, I just want to say on a final note, I get a sense of almost apologeticness that it's a brief report, but I like that we started lean, and I think that there's power in that because now we can really get to what do we want to expand on, what is actually related to other departments, and I think it is a really long list when you look at it. So I can imagine a table chart that would go on for several pages, and I'm happy that we've begun the conversation, but I like it.
And then just adding to that, just a brief kind of touching on the data and analytics of how effective something is. And while we don't, as our department doesn't necessarily always have that kind of information, that it doesn't mean that our public affairs department and our PIO, they're collecting hits on how many people are watching this YouTube right now, or maybe they watch it later, conducting surveys. An example would be, our green team that puts on Earth Day, the first inaugural Earth Day that we had last year, there was QR codes everywhere that asked you to scan it, ask for a survey. How did you hear about this? What did you like most about the event? That kind of stuff. Now that data doesn't always come to our department, so that would be a more extensive and exhaustive task to gather all that from departments and ask about all those data and analytics. But just because I don't have it before you, it is being collected, I assure you. So.
I appreciate all the comments. That's really assuring that moving forward, we're going to take a different approach. And I really appreciate everybody collaborating with this. And just like David said, some of the moms don't have the means. So taking that approach to use our informal networks is definitely going to be really, moving forward, it's going to be really successful. Also, like they mentioned, moms are really, really, really active in our community. And that's the way I'm actually organizing all these projects that we've been doing for Shalimar. And they just want to do more and more and more. So if we can, give them more information and figure out a way to get a translator here, I'm sure they'll be more than happy to come and share their ideas as well. So thank you all.
Any other comments?
There was no action requested for this item. So.
Sure. Well, totally. Well, I just want to say, from my perspective, I think it's the job of the chair, it's important to bring forward, any commissioner wants to bring forward a discussion, an agenda item. I think, that's the beauty of this commission. We collaborate well together. And so I appreciate this being brought forward in that lens. So I do want to separate that from my personal opinion. And I do want to say with all due respect, I do think passionately, right? It's our job really, to be, deeply engaged, not just in our commission meetings, but as commissioners to be engaged in everything that's going on in the city. And to some extent, in this discussion, I don't even think the onus belongs as, if we've had a lot of discussion about, staff's work on community engagement. Every time there's a project, we talk about, the community, literally every time there's been a park project in the last 4 years, there's always concern about where the community meeting's gonna be, when it's gonna be, this and that. But I do think it's really important to reiterate that there's an onus on all of us as commissioners to be advocating, championing, promoting the programs that are happening, the events that are happening. And so I just wanted to share that perspective too, because I've seen community engagement improve dramatically in this city. There have been some really incredible moments, for example, from 2018, some really groundbreaking community engagement in this city that's changed the whole course of how something was done. The example I'm talking about is the homeless shelter. There was under prior city council, there was a really disastrous series of community meetings and town halls. But then there was this process where staff really turned it around and held this really innovative series of open house style community meetings where people could engage one-on-one. There were all these mini pockets of conversation. So I just share that as a historical example. I think there's so much that's already been done, right? And I think that's the challenge for us, right? Even sometimes Jason and I will be talking about this and it's like, oh, well, what happened with the Parks Department 15 years ago? Because none of us were here, right? So we have to, do that homework and dig it up and figure that out. So I think that's a challenge, right, with community engagement, is that, to Monique's point, we could talk about this all night if you want to talk about this all night, right? But I think, I guess I question the value in talking so much about it because, it's, time is money, right? We can either run up the tab with consultants, we can run up our time here, we can run up the tab with, staff time and all of that stuff. So I guess my consideration, my encouragement is for commissioners to view ourselves, if we see a gap in community engagement, the onus is on us to fill that gap as the representatives of our constituents in this community. So just as much as we're challenging staff, I'm going to challenge my fellow commissioners to put that onus on you as well.
And I think our onus as staff is to get you information with plenty of time to be able to forward it. And I can't guarantee every single meeting, but that is our pledge.
Understood. And I think that's good feedback on the community meeting for Saturday, that some people felt like that wasn't enough notice. And I agree with that, but just understand, that wasn't the first, that wasn't the last community meeting, it was just the first, there's gonna be more. So I think, let's make sure to incorporate that feedback going forward on community meetings so people don't feel that way again.
Well, we talk about the sweet spot, when is it too far in advance and when is it not enough notice, and trying to make sure we hit that sweet spot.
Sure. And that's the trick with planning any event, right? There's always going to be somebody that can't make it.
Can I just weigh in? I think that there is a difference of philosophy that's happening, because even while I recognize that individuals do play really important roles, and the more that we're empowered to do that work, the more impactful we'll be. But I mean, in some ways, I hear what you're suggesting as an argument of the individual versus structural change. And so what I will say about my note is that it argues for structural change, and that we have roles to play as individuals in order to make that structural change. And that structural change then impacts everyone and not just particular communities who are super engaged. So the more that we can do structurally and to think broad, I think it's worth our time. So I just think there's we have different philosophies in terms of the role of public engagement too, and the responsibility.
No, I appreciate that, Commissioner Braun, and I think you have a lot of wisdom to bring on this topic. I wouldn't say per se that we have different philosophies. I don't disagree with what you're saying, but what I'm also saying is that when we talk about any kind of tactic or process you want to implement, right? The question is who, when, and who's going to do it, right? When are they going to do it? And it always falls on somebody's shoulders to execute and implement that. So that's what I'm challenging us to do, right? We see these things you want to see happen. You see this process you want to see done. I'll actually give Commissioner Wright a shout out, right? She's very creative on creating her own, she doesn't wait for staff to create a survey. She goes on her Instagram story and makes a survey and collects public input, right? We didn't need there to be, a whole meeting to discuss for that to be executed and that to be experimented with and to try that new approach, right? And I think that's the beauty is, like all of us up here, we have that skill set, we have that expertise, we have that talent. Commissioner Wall does video. You have a long history of working in the higher education space and local government. I could go down the line. I respect all of you. I just want to be clear about that. But in that vein, I also want to encourage us, to do more, right? Anytime we see that anytime we see that not enough is being done, ask yourself what you're doing as well, in addition to, giving feedback to staff. So I guess that's my comment. Those are my thoughts.
If I could just chime in too, like you said, I think we all agree on this is a very extensive subject. We can go on and on, but it doesn't have to necessarily be a report or an agenda item. The commission is always welcome to throw out an idea during a meeting, for a recommendation of, hey, why don't we try this? A good example that you probably don't even know about, that he probably doesn't even know about, but Commissioner Arcos over here, he had recommended a few meetings back that the My Costa Mesa app, can we do it in Spanish, or can we teach some community members how to use it better? I went and told our constituent services team, saying, hey, our commissioner said that maybe some community members need help learning how to do our My Costa Mesa app. I told them, and within the next 2 weeks, they were going out to some neighborhoods and having little workshops on the My Costa Mesa app in Spanish to teach them how to use that. That was a direct result of just an idea he threw out during public comment. So we are taking notes, we are listening, and you're free to throw out ideas at any meeting during your comments. So like I said, it doesn't necessarily have to be an agenda report item, so we encourage it, we welcome it, we love the ideas, we love the feedback. So like we said, we can go on, but just know that we're listening, and it's a very good discussion. So.
Can I add something?
Sure. I was going to say that's a nice note to end on, but go ahead, Commissioner Wright.
Well, I think to sum up the debate between, what's our individual role, and thank you for highlighting. I do like to get creative, and I think there's something for engaging with younger people on social media that is difficult when you have to go through an entire level of bureaucracy and approvals, right? But I do feel personally my reach is inherently limited. And I even have gone above and beyond to meet, 2,000 residents and connect with them, but it is inherently not a structural change. And that's even with me up here, right? And being a part of this body. And so I'm almost wondering, it is not a mutually exclusive approach. It can be all of us taking this, taking our roles seriously in public engagement, and also taking our roles seriously in the fact that we are here to provide feedback, to provide our expertise to you. And this seems to be something that could be better. And so it could also come from staff. And as far as of course, nobody wants to waste anyone's time or belabor an unnecessary point, but what is the point of all the money if it's not being collaborative with the public to the best of our ability in a timely manner of our, deadlines and such, of course. That's kind of my question is just because it's an expansive topic that we could talk about forever doesn't mean we just don't talk, or doesn't mean we don't we don't at least take a stab at it or try to push the rock up further for whoever the next generation of commissioners will be. So yeah, I almost feel like it doesn't have to be this binary decision. I think I would appreciate revisiting this as a formal topic because it does get naturally buried in the excitement of project management, right? It's like a component of project management. But when we're talking about like an entire, like when we're talking about CIPs, right? Like that's its own multi-million-dollar item we're talking about. This is more process oriented, I feel. And yeah, I don't feel like I have a clear idea of what all of those channels mean, what they look like. I would love to at least be presented a presentation or a report so that, you know, our feedback can be more accurate and we can then go out and continue filling the gaps better.
I actually think Commissioner Wright and Commissioner Brown, both of you have excellent feedback to provide. And I actually don't think we need this to be on a formal agenda item, right? I think we're fortunate in the city to have a very responsive and talented staff. And as Monique said, they take our ideas and run with them, right? They take our feedback seriously. So I encourage you, you know, don't wait till the next meeting. You know, any ideas we can bring forward and execute on and take tangible steps, let's do it, right? Let's run with it. So that's my encouragement as well.
Well, is this like open to the commission to decide? Can we make a motion to see this again? Or is it up to, or would we say the majority would agree that we should not revisit this as a formal item?
There's no action
does that work?
proposed tonight,
Oh,
but
okay.
if you want to make a suggestion, you're always welcome to.
Yeah, I think my suggestion is that we do revisit this in a more in-depth manner in like 2-3 months. To then decide if it does feel right that this becomes like more of a formal point when we evaluate projects and events, or if it just should organically come up because it is something that we're passionate about.
So if I could just chime in, like I said, a more in-depth of how we do engagement or outreach and engagement varies from project to project. It's not always us. And every form of outreach and engagement, right, has specific directions, missions, objectives. A lot of the CIP projects, individualized projects, do come before you. There is public engagement sessions. We send out notices. You know, Rob has brought playground renovations to us before. He brought the lakes, and we put up that notices out. We inform the public, hey, this is your time to come solicit input, and we do it differently by project. So when a certain project comes specifically before the commission, we do agendize that part of it. So project by project, we choose to agendize it. A more broad overlay of how that would require a lot more, I think, information that would take more time, I think, because it involves so many other departments. And like I said, our public affairs manager who oversees our PIO department is the spearhead and I guess I would say the expertise on that. And they're currently in the process of recruiting a government affairs manager or public affairs manager. So I don't know how close they are in that process. But you know, the PIO, it's very complex. And like I said, we take the ideas. I didn't go and teach somebody the Milo Costa Mesa app, but I passed that message along. And so, you know, I think the topic and the overview from how the city as a whole does it by project is going to vary, but certain things, parks related, playgrounds related, program related, we will take before you and agendize it, if that makes sense.
So I think various ones of us have interesting questions. What I'm going to recommend, if this makes sense, is that those of us that really want to understand a little bit more to outreach to Director Minter to get a little bit of idea. And because I'm a process person, I'm going to reach out to Commissioner Brown to understand what, you know, like institutionally. But because we're really focused as a Parks Commission and is to really focus our concerns on outreach, engagement, collaboration on what sort of we've been asked to do by this commission, by the City Council. that I think this was important to have this kind of an idea so we got an overview. But I'm hearing it is so multi-layered, of which we're only one piece of it. It's sort of, I like to analogize about an octopus. So you have an octopus head that's supposed to do this, but each leg, because there's so many different projects. But I don't want to stop any of the commissioners from asking questions, but I don't know how effective it would be to keep bringing this up to us when it's this sort of a nebulous. But I think what it would help me, and I don't know if the other commissioners, as we're moving into all of these construction projects and input, is to understand the process that is being used for that project so that we make sure the timing of the outreach, the timing of the information is happening, that each, in a way that we feel is not, I don't want to say responsible, but is reliable data. I mean, if it's great that, and you're right, the moms do, as a mom, you want to do anything, you want to tell anything, go to the elementary schools and put up a sign there and say what's going on, and you'll get it out in 3 seconds on fire, or the preschools. So I don't know if that helps to sort of define a little better, because I think some of us have more interest in questions. And if that makes sense, Director Minter, to have those be individually asked of you. And then if there's if you can see what's needed, maybe bring it up, in 6 months or whatever. Does that, because we have a lot of projects.
And I don't want this to derail us. I want it to actually get us on track. And I think I like the idea of us all individually asking questions, but then the director is individually answering questions. And, we're not allowed to talk, more than 2 or 3 people, right? So I think it's efficient to do it in this way. It's also public facing, right? So that it's recorded, people know what we're talking about. And I don't want to lose sight of that, because when we are then interacting one-on-one, the public, whoever they are, they're not a part of that, right? And so that for me is deeply problematic. One thing that could happen is that, one, the PIO, because the government, it's interesting that hopefully the PIO isn't the same as the governmental relations officer, but the PIO then should be involved in this. Like, it would be nice to have them so we could ask questions of them. But one way that we could do this is that every time, like public, whatever you want to call the section, right? Because I think the language is complicated for me. Whatever the section is called, that's built in to everything. Just like there's financials built in, there's, overview, recommendations, that section on, I'm just going to call it outreach and engagement for right now. That's built into everything. And if we're going to do that, then we think about what are the processes, like what are you doing as a part of that? What are the outcomes? What are the results that you want? Build that into everything. And that's part of my interest, is like, I'd like to know what it is, because I've been on the commission and I don't know, other than what's in this report. I can't give you any specifics. And that's like a challenge for me, that I can't really talk about the details of it. I think that's important, and I think that is doing due diligence. So we could just include a section, and that could be a start, and it's an opportunity for us to have a back and forth, to ask questions, for you to ask questions of us, to like push us. Like, if you don't think that public engagement is effective, what would you do, Commissioner Brown? Like, put me on the spot, like, how would you do it differently? I welcome that. But I do think there needs to be a physical space for it in the reports. It's a way of, well, let me put it this way. It would be a way for the city to signal it's truly important.
Commissioner Brown, I do have to chime in though. I feel like there's already a precedent of that being done in the city. I've gotten reports, like Raja mentioned, for the Lions Park project in 2019. There was an incredibly aggressive and ambitious community engagement effort to solicit that feedback. And as commissioners, we got that report and we got to review it. And I know you weren't on the commission at that time, but that's why I think Vice Chair Dorn Parker made a wise point, so I'm going to lean on her wisdom, that there's varying levels of engagement and history in the city here. And I do think it is important that we're all on the same level and operating with the same information. That being said, though, some of these things, if other commissioners feel like some discussions maybe are redundant or have already been had before or have already been had in the context of other things, that is appropriate. I think, it doesn't have to be a recorded meeting for us to ask staff questions, get information, and do that fact finding. And I support you in doing that and you bringing that back to the commission and advocating on that. behind you 100%, but we don't have to do all of this in a very resource-intensive public meeting because it takes a lot of people to keep the lights on and keep this whole thing running right now. So I just want to be mindful of everybody's time. So I guess that's my perspective on this. You know what I mean? I think we do want to be, as Monique said, like very intentional. You know, when we're talking about a specific project, and I like that idea, when we're talking about a specific project, what are the metrics we're looking at on that project? I think that's a good discussion to have, but I will be candid in saying I would not support us having this, just a general discussion again on the commission. And we have literally every commission meeting to do that, right? Every commission meeting, we all have open comments to advocate and champion what we think is important. So let's use it, right?
So at the, hopefully to summarize, and the commitment from staff would be to try to be more thorough in describing the outreach methods that were used to enable that discussion for individual program and project needs. Monique has mentioned, I think at the last meeting, the intention to bring more program-specific information. That way our staff have the ability to get in front of the commission and be able to answer questions. And I think that would be a good resource is, to hear it from the actual people doing it. I have spoken with the city's PIO. There's the city manager, public information officer. There's the police department has a public information officer, and then fire has a PIO as well. So each of the three are responsible for I think those are the most important heads of public information. And, there's a chance that if we get to a certain point in the discussion that we would like the PIO to come before, we can schedule that at another meeting. But I think for now, I would recommend, just due to the lack of staff time and pending issues that we need to bring before the commission, that we will try to target it on a project or program basis so that we can, move forward in that direction and hopefully keep those channels of communication open for those that want to engage. Before that, they can definitely email me and I will, try to work with staff to get the appropriate responses to all those. So.
Would it be okay to move us on to in the interest of time? I do not want to keep us here 4 hours like last time. That's not, we want to reverse that trend. Yeah, uh-oh. All right.
You're the chair, sir.
All right, let's move on to the next item on our agenda, the Park Ranger report and monthly reports.
For the Park Ranger report, not much. I did want to make sure that the commission saw, I forwarded an email. It was an Instagram post that the police department did, just cracking down on graffiti, and I'm going to try to get more updates that I can send to the commission, because I know that's been expressed as concerns from our partners at OCME, at Fairview Park, and other places. So with that, I don't have anything else to add for the Park Ranger report.
I think that, I think that conversation that Councilmember Gameros was having on Saturday was related to that? No?
I'm not sure which conversation you're...
I'll follow up privately, never mind. Are there, let's open it up for public comment. If there's any public comments on the Park Ranger report, now is the time. Seeing nobody in the chambers, and there's nobody on, is there anybody on Zoom? No, there's not. Awesome. Okay. So that will close the Park Ranger report. We'll receive and file. I see no commissioner comments. And that moves us on to the director's report. Jason, the floor is yours. Thank you.
There was an email that's been provided to you from Arts Chair Ashendorf, a previous public speaker. Hopefully each of you have it, just with some suggestions for information and kind of highlighting the senior population and, the comments there. In addition to that, we'll let Monique go first in terms of programs, and then we'll get to the last page and I'll just do a quick update. So, Monique?
So for the sake of time, not to undermine any of our programming, but programming continues to grow and thrive, and our staff are doing a fantastic job gearing up for summer. So lots of stuff, day camps, summertime's the busy season, pool stuff, so working hard on just prepping and preparing for everything program and event related. Just gonna note, Love Costa Mesa Day is coming up on Saturday, May 20th. I encourage you all to participate. This is a multi-organization effort from nonprofits, from the city standpoint, from all departments in question, where we either come up with a project or the community has submitted a project, and staff on our side from the city manager's office, Francine Jimenez, and Public Works, they meet regularly to plan this event, and it's a worthwhile event. It's going to be fun. There's a kickoff. I think they're getting a band to play, and then they head off to their projects, and it's a really good day of volunteering. So I encourage you all to go to that. We also have a free park symphony, and by park, I mean the Costa Mesa Senior Center parking lot coming up on May 27th. This is an first of its kind for us. It's free park performances, and it's our Symphony on the Go. So come on out. It's a 45-minute performance, I believe, so very short and sweet. And bring a blanket and come and enjoy some symphony. Again, some summer events coming up, movies in the park. We'll get into concerts a little bit later. But encourage you all to come out and start prepping for summer.
Thank you, Monique. Capital projects update. I know that's always been a hot topic. I think once we get through the approval of the capital budget, we'll get into a little bit more exciting territory there. Just for all of you, if you want to make a note of it, June 6th is when the budget should be presented, both the operating budget and the capital improvement program budget, to the city council. Ideally, I think from a staff perspective, including the finance director, it's a one meeting and done. There is a fallback date if additional changes or requirements are requested. It can come back to the council on June 20th, but the June 6th date, as it is before our next commission meeting, just wanted you to be aware of that date in case you wanted to participate. For those of you that were paying attention to the meeting on Tuesday, there was a lot of advocacy from our arts folks, both on the commission and members of the public. And I think that type of representation by the Arts Commission really represented the community's need for art. So, as commissioners, as you ask, well, what can I do? I think that was a great example of the arts commissioners stepping up and making their voices heard in front of the council. So I know there's right now a lot more diversity and opportunities and projects and everything related to your commission than the Arts Commission. But, I think that is a great example of what commissioners can do and the actions that you all can take. Yes, you can talk to council members individually or at events. You can send them emails or texts, however you communicate with them. But obviously the public meetings are also a great opportunity to do that. So with that, I will leave it open to questions.
All right, seeing no questions. Oh, Commissioner Wright has a question.
Sorry, I figured someone else would jump in. I wonder if you had a status update on the Luke Davis Field.
Not an official one that I can share, but we are very close, and hopefully early next week we will have a flyer out, and that's 2.5 weeks, hopefully 2 or 3 weeks before a potential event. So
Wow,
yeah.
That's exciting. Okay, and then my only other thing is I will be following up with you if you could send me anything on how a joint use agreement process works. I'll try to research that more. Thank you.
Just one super quick question. The wetlands and wild art, oh crap, it's so late. I don't even know if I'm saying that. The Wetlands and Wildlife Care Center, is that? They made a public comment at City Council months ago. There's been articles about the issue, and I think it's pretty clear cut with the volume of animals from our parks that are being cared for by them. So I just wanted to do some advocacy follow up on that. With you, Director Minter. I don't know if that's under your purview, Monique or Rob, but...
No, I'm happy to say that the police department is taking the lead on that, as they're the animal control officers, and they do most of the transporting of animals on behalf of the city. There are a great deal of animals that are actually taken in by residents, and I believe that makes up more than 50% of the city share.
That wasn't my question. My question was about the Wetlands and Wildlife Animal Care Center because of the volume of animals they're caring for. If there's going to be an agreement with them, or conversations with them. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. The animal controller, through the police department, they're taking the lead on working in agreement. I was just merely describing one of the challenges that they faced was animal control doesn't bring all of those animals in. A lot of them are taken in by residents, and it's just working through some of that language. It'd be great if they had some consistent application of a policy across multiple organizations. I think some research has been done, and it varies significantly organization or municipality to municipality. So it's definitely ongoing conversations, and I don't think there's any hesitancy on the city to support the Wildlife Center. It's just going to take some time to make sure we're putting the right plan in action and making sure that they get the funding that they need.
Cool. I appreciate that. Thank you. Awesome. All right. Well, that's Director Minter. We always appreciate your reports. And thank you, Monique, for providing those updates. I think that brings us to the end. So we'd like to receive and file that. Would any members of the public like to comment on the director's report? Almost forgot that. Awesome. Anybody on Zoom that would like to comment on the director's report? There's nobody on Zoom. Okay. All right. Well, then we will adjourn at 9:29 p.m. Only 3.5 hours this time. So thank you, everybody. And our next meeting is on Thursday, June 8th.